Chapter 1048. I was wrong, I really was wrong. I'm ashamed of what my motherland has done for me, and I sincerely apologize to the students I held hostage in the auditorium. I'll accept however many years I need to be sentenced to. In the interrogation room, Father Zheng confessed to his illegal actions. Although he hadn't caused anyone harm, the hostage-taking had really happened. Furthermore, until a new witness testified in the public trial, Father Zheng couldn't be cleared of being a murderer. At that moment, Gao Tian, Odd Zhua, and Little Silver were all facing Father Zheng in the interrogation room. Little Silver was in charge of taking down Father Zheng's statement. For Little Silver, this was a way of accumulating material. He had been learning to write novels recently, but he wasn't very talented. He had already serialized more than 100,000 words, but he hadn't received a contract offer backstage. Little Silver felt that it was because he hadn't accumulated enough material enough. Thus, helping Gao Tian take down his statement was also a way of accumulating material. Gao Tian's and Odd Zhua's interrogations were different. In order not to steal the credit, the two of them had a clear division of labor. Gao Tian only asked about the hostage-taking, while Odd Zhua asked about the magic treasure plagiarism case. Did you take the auditorium hostage because of the plagiarism case 3 years ago? Gao Tian asked. Yes, I had to find out the truth about it. I wouldn't hesitate, no matter the price, Father Zheng replied, his hands shackled in spirit shackles. This was originally a treatment reserved for the old devil, but considering that Odd Zhua had taken the blame in recent months and that the realm of the wanted criminals who had been caught had gotten higher and higher, Wang Ling and Wang Ming decided to have the Research Institute mass-produce them. Spirit shackles had already become a standard in prison. If no new witness had appeared, would you still have done this? Gao Tian asked. Father Zheng thought for a while, then said hesitantly, It's hard to say, you should have taken legal action. That's the right way to go, Gao Tian said. But I really didn't have any other choice. I used online complaints and offline petitions, but nothing came of it in the end, because I didn't have any concrete evidence. As for the witnesses I wanted to find, they all died at the hands of others after I arrived. I didn't hurt anyone in this matter. Father Zheng said in full detail, including Lu Yi. At first, I just wanted to use magic to pull him out from behind the screen. In the end, when I passed through the screen, I suddenly realized that Lu Yi was already dead. Gao Tian nodded. He compared Father Zheng's confession with the evidence they had so far. Father Zheng's words were very credible. He could answer most of the questions in great detail. It was similar to the information the police had. It was just that Gao Tian and everyone else in the interrogation room was very concerned about one thing. Father Zheng's realm had increased abnormally. What's going on here? Explain to me how you managed to raise your cultivation so quickly. Don't tell me it's because of a fortuitous encounter. It's not, and you're not the main character. Gao Tian gazed at Father Zheng. It wasn't just Gao Tian who was curious about this matter. All the police officers who had been paying attention to this covert operation were actually very curious. I don't know if you believe me. Speaking of his sudden increase in realm, Father Zheng was a little flustered. He stared into Gao Tian's eyes and replied, It's because of a bag of frozen dumplings. Instant frozen dumplings. As soon as this answer came out, all the police officers inside and outside the interrogation room were shocked. What on earth is going on? Gao Tian asked. It actually happened a few days ago, on September 14th. Faced with questioning, Father Zheng told them everything about how he had become stronger. For so many years, I've been secretly looking for evidence in an attempt to retract my confession. All my living expenses are basically used to pay for the detective's investigation. To save money, I usually go to the cultivation department store to buy things in the returned goods section. That day, as usual, I bought a few bags of frozen food. In the end, after I went back and ate one, I suddenly felt my whole body heat up, and my realm advanced by leaps and bounds. I was full of energy, and then, my realm increased just like that. Gao Tian, Little Silver, and Odd Zhua all sucked in cold breaths of air when they heard this. That was right. There were no push-ups, no squats, and he didn't insist on not turning on the air conditioner on a hot summer day. It was all because of a bag of frozen dumplings that Father Zhang had advanced. The point was that this matched up with the information the police had. The information in Gao Tian's hands clearly stated that after Father Zhang had been detained, the police had found a bag of frozen dumplings in his rental apartment, which had already been eaten. Furthermore, it was confirmed that the dumplings had been bought from the store's returned goods section, and had been sold at a 40% discount. Although it was hard to believe, Gao Tian completely believed Father Zhang's words. Not only did they have the information in their hands to testify, but the polygraph in the interrogation room hadn't detected anything unusual. This was a high-precision polygraph. As long as someone didn't answer the question truthfully, the polygraph would emit a beeping alarm. Of course, this alarm couldn't be played directly. The warning sound would continue to be transmitted through the earpieces hanging in the ears of Gao Tian, Odd Zhua, and Little Silver in the interrogation room. Prisoners usually didn't know about the polygraph, which was to prevent prisoners from deliberately preparing answers in advance when they were being interrogated. Thus, Gao Tian and the other police officers were stunned. How could a bag of frozen dumplings be so powerful? F***K. What's the stuffing in these dumplings? Celery, pork, or mushroom? I'll eat them when I get back tonight. The police officers outside the interrogation room couldn't sit still anymore, especially Chief Xiao himself. He had been paying close attention to this case, and after learning the secret of Father Zhang's promotion, he was so excited that he almost jumped up. The reason why he hadn't been promoted wasn't just because his performance wasn't good enough, but also because he was stuck at a bottleneck in his realm. Chief Xiao had been stuck at the nascent soul stage for a very long time, and if he wanted to be transferred to a central core department like Huaxiao Alliance, he had to be at the soul formation stage or above. Gao Tian and Odd Zhua then whispered to each other and decided to take Father Zhang for a checkup. If it really was because of those frozen dumplings, as long as they did a detailed test, they should be able to analyze the ingredients of the dumplings from Father Zhang's gastric juices. Alright, that's all for my questioning. Director Zhua's next. At that moment, Gao Tian capped his pen and crossed his fingers. It's over. Odd Zhua said. That's it. Gao Tian nodded affirmatively. Since the chain of evidence matched up, Gao Tian felt that there was no need to continue the interrogation on the hijacking itself. On the contrary, Gao Tian was more interested in the reopening of the case 3 years ago. But he wasn't the person in charge of it, so Gao Tian could only hand it over to Odd Zhua. First of all, I want to know more about student Jing Jingshuan's family situation. May I ask, why did you divorce student Jing Jingshuan's mother, Madame He Xiulan? Odd Zhua's first question was a little personal, but it was still very necessary. His family environment was also a major reason why student Jing chose to commit suicide in the end. Because Alan and I didn't get along, so we divorced, Father Zhang replied. As soon as he said that, Odd Zhua and the others instantly heard the lie detector alarm in their headsets. Beep 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 beep, Father Zhang, please answer your question truthfully. Odd Zhua's gaze turned sharp. Father Zhang panicked a little. Because Alan found out that I cheated, beep 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 beep, because I realized that I like men, beep 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 beep, Father Zhang was almost in tears. F***K. Because our married life isn't happy, of course, it's mainly because of me. Is that okay? This time, the alarm didn't go off again. Tianjin. Chapter 1049. Odd Zhua wasn't interested in prying into other people's affairs. He had thought that Father Zhang was hiding the truth about the case. He hadn't expected Father Zhang to say something so shocking as soon as he opened his mouth, stupefying all the police officers at the police station. After understanding the situation, Odd Zhua realized that student Jing Jingshuan's suicide was actually a tragedy that had combined many factors. Student Zhang's mother, Madame He Xiulan, was a relatively strong person, and it was because of her strength that Jing Jingxian had started to fear women, so he could only constantly use his grades to boost his morale. Thus, after Odd Zhua and Gao Tian looked into student Zhang's information, they found that his academic record was extraordinarily good. He was first in his grade in almost all the exams and had won many competitions. It wasn't just the magic treasure design competition, even the spirit sword driving competition, the elixir refining competition and so on. Student Zheng had won first place with very outstanding results, standing out from his peers. Student Zheng became the focal point of the crowd. He enjoyed the feeling of being in the limelight, and it was precisely because of this habit that Student Zheng felt a kind of psychological pleasure. But all of this had happened too quickly. Student Zheng had been framed for plagiarism. It was his own design that had been stolen and then framed against him. The public opinion online put immense pressure on Student Zheng, and it was at that time that Zheng Tianxiang and He Xiulan agreed to a divorce, which directly led to this tragedy. Falling from the peak of his life to the bottom in one fell swoop, Zheng Jingxian completely lost himself. Perhaps in the last moment before he committed suicide, he instinctively found his last straw of hope, Lin Shiyao. He called Lin Shiyao to him, and using the excuse that he didn't want to be a burden on Lin Shiyao, he wrote something like a will. In order not to be a burden on Angel Capital, he drew a clear line between himself and Lin Shiyao, and then chose to commit suicide. After Zheng Jingshuan's death, Lin Shiyao sank into deep self-blame. She hated herself for being cowardly, for not pulling Zheng Jingxian out at the most critical moment, and instead started to doubt her boyfriend's behavior as the rumor spread. She also hated herself for being foolish, for actually not pulling Zheng Jingxian back to the other side at the last moment. She hated herself the most, but it was too late to say anything now. The dead couldn't be brought back to life. Zheng Jingshuan's death had been buried for 3 whole years along with the magic treasure plagiarism case from 3 years ago. As Father Zheng said, he had tried many normal channels to lodge a complaint, but the mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes had left him powerless to breathe. Helpless, Father Zheng finally chose this path that seemed to be out of desperation. September 19th, the 36th day of the summer vacation. As for Father Zheng's hostage kidnapping case and the magic treasure plagiarism case from 3 years ago, the Cultivation Police Bureau and the General Administration of 100 schools respectively filed public prosecutions in court. The Police Bureau requested that the hostage kidnapping case be charged, while the General Administration of 100 schools requested that the magic treasure plagiarism case be retried. This was a public trial, and all the people in the country, including many foreign netizens, were paying attention to this incident online. There were no empty seats in the auditorium. Apart from the media reporters, Zhou Dongye, the headmaster of Magic Treasure Development University, as well as other people involved in the plagiarism case from 3 years ago who were still alive, had been summoned to court by the police bureau. When Gao Tian brought Father Zheng to the defendant's seat in the courtroom with spirit shackles on his hands, he saw a familiar person. Student Fu Fusheng, who had accused Zheng Jingxian of plagiarism back then, was also sitting here. He was sitting in the second defendant's seat, and was probably going to appear in court as a defendant in the plagiarism case. At the same time, Student Fu Fusheng was probably the person who knew the most about the case from 3 years ago, but those who were at the core of the case were basically all dead. Father Zheng had resented Fu Fusheng before, but looking at it now, he thought that maybe Fu Fusheng really didn't know anything, and was just a pitiful person who had been used. Otherwise, why would Fu Fusheng be here alive? Songhai Intermediate Cultivation Court. The judge in charge of the trial this time was called Liang Xian, a middle-aged man with swept-back hair and a righteous expression. Since this case wasn't just about the hostage situation, there was also the possibility of overturning the verdict on the case from 3 years ago. Thus, the presiding judge, the judges, the jurors, and the court clerk in charge of the case from 3 years ago had all voluntarily recused themselves to ensure that the case was fair and just. All rise. The court is now in session. There wasn't the slightest ripple on Liang Xian's face. He had been directly assigned by his superiors to take over this case. Because the 2 cases were being tried together, plus Father Zheng's actions to garner attention before the trial, this case had garnered a lot of attention in society. Liang Xian was well aware of the seriousness of the matter. The presiding judge and all the judges were there to crack down on those who broke the law and return the innocence of the innocent. The whole place was silent. After Chief Judge Liang took his seat, he hit the table with a crisp hammer, and the trial officially began. Defendant Zheng Tianxiang, on September 18, 4396, you hijacked a small auditorium at Songhai Magic Treasure Development University, and a total of 53 people were taken hostage. Although you didn't injure the hostages, you damaged the auditorium and other public facilities, and are guilty of hostage-taking. You are now being prosecuted for destroying public facilities and hostage-taking. Do you have any objections to the prosecution's conclusion? Asked Chief Judge Liang. No objections, replied Father Zhang from the defendant's stand. Chief Judge Liang nodded, then turned his gaze to the second defendant's stand. Summon the second defendant, Fu Fusheng. When his name was called, Fu Fusheng's face gradually showed some nervousness. He was well aware of the impact this plagiarism case would have on his life. Even if he was one of Lu Yi's pawns, it was true that Lu Yi had stolen Jing Jingshuan's magic treasure design from high school and given it to Fu Fusheng to compete in the competition. Furthermore, Fu Fusheng had also used that design, and after the incident, he had even reprimanded Jing Jingxian for plagiarism. Now that the case had been dug up again, he would definitely be accused of fraud. Most importantly, Raven Studio would face a huge blow. At the time, Fu Fusheng didn't know that the design he had used hadn't come from Lu Yi. He had thought that Lu Yi was a talented person. He hadn't expected this guy to actually be a saint thief. Chief Judge Liang hit the gavel. Fu Fusheng, please guarantee the veracity of what you say next. If you are suspected of fraud, you can be convicted of perjury in court. Chief Judge, I swear that everything I say is true, Fu Fusheng said after taking a deep breath. May I ask if the design for the Magic Treasure Design competition 3 years ago was your original work? Asked Chief Judge Liang. Fu Fusheng thought for a bit, then raised his head and said resolutely, yes. There was an uproar at his words. Odd Zhua, Little Silver, and Gao Tian hadn't expected Fu Fusheng to actually choose to retract his statement at that moment. Tianjin. Chapter 1050. During the pre-trial hearing, Fu Fusheng's answer had been the complete opposite of what he was saying now. He had pushed all the blame onto Lu Yi, put himself out of the picture, and at the same time pretended to be the victim. Later, he felt that Fu Fusheng was probably doing this mainly to absolve himself of the crime. Now that things had developed to this point, it was questionable whether Raven Studio could continue to operate. Raven Studio was now at the critical stage of going public, and Fu Fusheng was unwilling to let his efforts go to waste just like that. The fame and wealth he had spent 3 years accumulating in the magic treasure design world might all come to an end with this trial. Thus, Fu Fusheng was afraid. Given the current situation, it was already no longer a problem for Fu Fusheng to lose money, since he could earn it back. But he absolutely couldn't have a criminal record. Using someone else's work to participate in a competition and flaunting it as an original work was also a form of academic fraud. After the incident with Dr. Zhai, the pioneer of academic fraud, Huaxiao Alliance had immediately issued new laws and regulations to rectify and restrain academic fraud on a large scale. The maximum penalty for this was a prison sentence of more than 30 years, a fine of 500,000 Huaxiao dollars, and the revocation of all academic qualifications and honors. Fu Fusheng was afraid that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. But since he had the guts to say this to the judge, he definitely had what it took to back it up. Long before the trial, Fu Fusheng had already known that almost all the people involved in the plagiarism case back then were dead. Given the lack of witnesses, Fu Fusheng was very confident. Chief Judge Liang Xian stared into Fu Fusheng's eyes. As an experienced judge, there were many times when he could tell whether a person was lying just by looking at their eyes. But unfortunately, this was a court in the cultivation world. Everything said and done required evidence, and a mere, "your eyes look like those of a murderer," wasn't enough to convict you. This case was highly publicized, and at the same time, it was very difficult to plead guilty. Furthermore, some of the people involved were no longer alive. Given the lack of evidence, as the defendant, Fu Fusheng was bound to play tricks. All of this was within Chief Judge Liang Xian's expectations, but he hadn't expected Fu Fusheng to speak so resolutely, not giving himself any leeway at all. But as the chief judge, Liang Xian wasn't affected by Fu Fusheng, and his face was still as calm as an ancient well. He then turned to look at the prosecution. Since the prosecution had filed a public prosecution, They must have already found evidence. Prosecution, please speak. Liang Xian raised his hand to indicate for the prosecution to begin. Fu Fuxing had hired a lawyer. This lawyer was called Wu Yuanji, and was one of the few powerful lawyers in all of Songhai City. Furthermore, Wu Yuanji was a rather thorny figure for all judges. This person advocated for the defense of innocence. In order to show his strength unilaterally, he only helped others to plead not guilty. In order to support the theory of innocence, he was very good at finding doubtful points and loopholes in the case to create evidence that was favorable to the defendant. This time, Fu Fuxing's defense lawyer was Wu Yuanji, which made Gao Tian feel a little headache. Is there a problem with this person? Little Silver asked in a low voice. This person's name is Wu Yuanji. He's very good at sophistry, and he can forge evidence without giving himself away. He's a very tricky lawyer. He has defended more than 100 cases, and all of them were acquitted as soon as he accepted them. So far, he has only lost one case. What case? Little Silver was curious. Gao Tian said, there was a family where the wife cheated on her husband. The husband went out and killed the adulterer. Later, he was charged with murder. In the end, because of Wu Yuanji, it was proven that there wasn't enough evidence, so the man was released. In the end, that man went out and killed his wife. Little Silver and awed Zhua, just as Gao Tian and the judges in the courtroom had expected. Perhaps because of Wu Yuanji's presence, Fu Fuxing's performance was much steadier than everyone had imagined. He was frighteningly calm. As for Wu Yuanji, he didn't take this case seriously at all. He sat calmly in the dock with his legs crossed. This frivolous attitude was quite suspicious of contempt for the court, and this was also the reason why Wu Yuanji was not liked by the judges. However, this guy was a notorious legend in the legal world. This was because this person dared to take on any case, even defending a murderer. What Wu Yuanji didn't expect was that in the only case he had lost, his client had been so crazy that after being acquitted, he went on to kill his wife. It was during that time that Wu Yuanji was given the title, Demon Lawyer, which meant, a lawyer who defended demons. But Wu Yuanji didn't think it mattered what the outside world called him. The most important thing was that he felt that he was very strong. At least in the legal circle, he believed that no one could be his match. Furthermore, he didn't take on cases to earn a high lawyer's fee. What Wu Yuanji liked most was to challenge himself. The trickier the case, the more Wu Yuanji felt an indescribable sense of pleasure after his client was acquitted. Was he a pervert? Perhaps Wu Yuanji did indeed have some psychological problems, but he was very satisfied with his title of Demon Lawyer. As long as he defended himself, he would definitely be acquitted in the following cases. What was the most important thing in court? Wu Yuanji smiled every time he thought of this. That was right, the most important thing was evidence. But what if there was no evidence? Without any evidence, even a public prosecution would be useless. Hence, Wu Yuanji had long since gotten rid of the last person, Lu Yi, before the incident. He felt that his plan had been flawless and he hadn't left any flaws. That was right, Wu Yuanji had killed Lu Yi. But he had only killed Lu Yi. As for the other people who had died before Lu Yi, it wasn't Wu Yuanji who had done it. Wu Yuanji had just imitated that person's modus operandi and erased Lu Yi without leaving any evidence. Furthermore, he had pushed all the evidence against Father Zhang's head. Lu Yi was already dead. How else could this case be judged? What new evidence could the prosecution come up with? He smiled. At this moment, Gao Tian stood up and turned to the presiding judge, Liang Xian, and the members of the jury. He bowed deeply to them and said, "Presiding judge and members of the jury, I hereby request for a new witness to be brought forward." As soon as these words came out, everyone present fell into a deep shock. There was actually a witness? Chapter 1051. Everything had happened so suddenly that Wu Yuanji had not expected the prosecution to find a new witness. Under Fu Fuxing's equally surprised gaze, Wu Yuanji decisively protested, "Chief Judge. The plaintiff did not submit the information according to the rules before submitting the new witness. I apply for a temporary adjournment. It was not surprising that Wu Yuanji could make this request. It was in accordance with the rules and regulations to apply for evidence in advance. However, if the court adjourned now, the next court session would have to wait until tomorrow. This was because the examination of the witness still needed to be decided by the jury. Only those who met the rules and regulations could appear in court as a witness. Liang Xian carefully weighed the pros and cons. He could roughly guess that Wu Yuanji was probably thinking of some conspiracy again. But it was precisely because this person was cunning that Liang Xian, as the presiding judge, knew that she had to follow the existing rules and regulations and adjudicate the case according to the existing laws. Otherwise, as long as Wu Yuanji got hold of the slightest flaw, he might apply to Huaxiao Alliance to replace the presiding judge. In Wu Yuanji's previous cases, it was not as if there were no precedents where the presiding judge was asked to be replaced after being caught red-handed in the middle of the case. The defense lawyer's request is granted. The public prosecution is requested to submit the witness information today for review in accordance with the rules and regulations. Therefore, after some consideration, Chief Judge Liang Xian finally agreed to Wu Yuanji's request. He slammed the gavel down, making a crisp sound. Court adjourned. To everyone's surprise, the court session lasted less than 10 minutes, but it was adjourned because of such an unexpected event. Now the whole internet was waiting to see the melon. No one had expected such a thing to happen. Netizens had different opinions about Liang Xian's decision. Some thought that Liang Xian was on Wu Yuanji's side, while others held the opposite opinion. They thought that Liang Xian, the presiding judge, was just following the rules and regulations. At the same time, Wang Ling was also watching the live online broadcast of the public trial. There were so many bullet messages on the screen that he was dazzled by them. In today's online environment, people didn't know who the other party was. The phenomenon of people attacking each other at the slightest disagreement had turned the bullet screens of major platforms into battlefields. Loopy Toad lay on Wang Ling's knee and watched the live stream with him. It was super envious of Little Silver, who could actually appear in court with Gao Tian as a member of the public prosecution. Loopy Toad had originally wanted to go today, but considering that some of the news reporters might be allergic to dog fur, it could only watch the live stream with Little Masterling at home. It was all because he hadn't cultivated into a human form. How great would it be if it could also transform into a human? Loopy Toad realized that after becoming a dog, it suddenly had a new goal. It decided that before Wang Ling graduated from high school, it would be able to cultivate a human form. Logically speaking, it wasn't difficult to cultivate a human form, but Loopy Toad's situation was a little special. It used to be a demon king of the demon race, and had later become a spirit beast thanks to Wang Ling's cultivation technique. Compared to other spirit beasts, Loopy Toad had more twists and turns on its path of cultivating a human form, as well as its gender and appearance. You'll be able to cultivate a human form. Wang Ling rubbed Loopy Toad's head, which numbed Dog 2 all over. For some reason, dogs and cats especially like to be touched by humans. Their chins or the part above their heads near their ears would often give them a comfortable feeling and make them tremble all over. Loopy Toad didn't feel much at first, but it gradually realized, it seemed to have been assimilated. And the longer time passed, the more serious the assimilation seemed to be. For example, recently, it had lost interest in fly-flavored dog food. It had actually fallen. Suddenly, Loopy Toad felt a pang in its heart. It was all Wang Ling's fault for spoiling it so much that he could let it lie on his knees. What normal person could receive this kind of treatment? While the online bullet messages were discussing the adjournment, Wang Ling received a message from Audiobook. Shifu, as expected, the court has been adjourned. Everything is going according to plan. Loopy Toad looked at Audiobook's message and was blank. Everything was going according to plan? Of course it was. Because long before the court session, Wang Ling had already predicted that the lawyer who would be representing Fu Fuxing this time would be Wu Yuanji, who was known as the Devil's Lawyer. Wang Ling had also discussed countermeasures in private with Audiobook early on. It could be said that Wu Yuanji had already fallen into their trap, and the adjournment this time was within their expectations. Director Zhua, what should we do next? Gao Tian was also actively communicating with Aud Zhua after the first round of the court hearing. Putting down his phone, Aud Zhua said to Gao Tian, let's stick to the original plan. Try to act as natural as possible and don't alert the enemy. Wu Yuanji is very cunning. As Aud Zhua and everyone else who knew Wu Yuanji thought, this devil's lawyer's greatest skill was to destroy and create evidence. What Aud Zhua and the others were going to do next was very simple. They were going to grab hold of Wu Yuanji's weakness, and then make him disappear from the legal circle forever to avoid any future troubles. Elsewhere, Wu Yuanji felt a headache coming on when he heard that the prosecutors had found a new witness. In the detention center, Wu Yuanji met with Fu Fuxing as his defense lawyer. Fu Fuxing was agitated as he gnashed his teeth. What's going on? Isn't Lu Yi already? Keep your voice down. Wu Yuanji rolled his eyes at Fu Fuxing. Lu Yi is indeed dead. I didn't expect them to find another witness. But it's fine. In any case, I can win the case, it's just a little more trouble for me. You have a solution? Fu Fuxing's eyes lit up, then darkened as he looked at Wu Yuanji. You should be well aware of my request. My request is to prove my innocence. Not only do I have to prove my innocence, I also have to protect my reputation. Reputation? Wu Yuanji laughed. He moved his face very close and stared into Fu Fuxing's angry eyes through the glass. From the moment you asked me to be your defense lawyer, what reputation do you have left? I want you to pay me double the original legal fees, which is 100 million yuan. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to find someone better. You. Fu Fuxing was speechless. I advise you to think clearly. Is your life and freedom more important, or money and reputation more important? You can weigh the pros and cons before telling me. You devil, I hope you understand that up until now, only I, the devil, can help you win this case. Speaking up to this point, Wu Yuanji curled his lips and smiled wickedly. As long as you understand, I will take action tonight. With that, Wu Yuanji slit his throat. Can you ensure that it's done cleanly? Of course it's clean. I'm already very familiar with these methods. Okay, I promise you. In the end, Fu Fuxing replied. But they didn't know that their entire meeting this time was under Gao Tian's surveillance. They actually wanted to murder a witness? Gao Tian could only use a popular phrase to describe the despicable behavior of these two people, making people spit out rice. Chapter 1052. Wu Yuanji must have had his own special intelligence network to be able to dominate the lawyer circle for so long. He had a group of spies under him who collected all kinds of information for him. Many of these people were criminals who had been prosecuted for the death penalty. Wu Yuanji acted as a defense lawyer for this group of people and finally ruled them innocent. Later, these people followed Wu Yuanji loyally and became Wu Yuanji's loyal intelligence personnel. Of course, the reason why Wu Yuanji chose to defend this group of people for free was not because he was kind, but because he liked their talent. The reason why Wu Yuanji's defense was so smooth was purely because this was a group of highly intelligent criminals. When they committed the crime, they would not leave too many traces. This also gave Wu Yuanji enough space to defend himself. Destroying evidence and turning the unreasonable into reasonable was the first rule of Wu Yuanji's defense. After negotiating the price with Fu Fuxing, Wu Yuanji began to investigate the new witness, and soon a document appeared on the desk of Wu Yuanji's law firm. Wu Yuanji originally thought it would take a long time. The witness's information was in the files of the police general office, and it didn't seem easy to hack into it. But now it seemed that his intelligence agent's skills had improved again. Seeing the document, Wu Yuanji was in a good mood. He had originally expected the document to be submitted at night, so he only needed to use the early morning to get rid of the witness. But the speed now exceeded Wu Yuanji's expectations. The sooner he got rid of the witness, the better it would be for Wu Yuanji, and at the same time, it would reassure his client. Fu Fuxing had spent 200 million in legal fees here, so he could be considered a big client. Little Liang, Wu Yuanji repeated the name on the document. There was no photo or home address in the document. Perhaps to protect the privacy of the important witness, these important information weren't recorded. Therefore, the only information Wu Yuanji obtained was the witness's name, Little Liang. And judging from the name, Wu Yuanji guessed that it should be a girl's name. Is that all? Wu Yuanji looked up at a young man sitting in the office. This young man was thin, and was also one of the people Wu Yuanji had saved. The young man shrugged and nodded helplessly. That's all. The other party might be prepared. Therefore, he did not know the detailed information. I also checked Jing Jingshuan's social connections, and there's no one named Little Liang around him. Maybe he's a neighbor or a passerby. Neighbors and passersby? Wu Yuanji scratched his head and suddenly felt his scalp itch. Zheng Jingxian had committed suicide in a secret room, and so had Lu Yi and the other important insiders. How could any passersby or neighbors have seen this? Based on these conditions, Wu Yuanji thought of a possibility. Could it be perjury? In order to prove that Fu Fuxing was guilty, the prosecution deliberately created a new witness. It was not impossible. But if there was, and if he managed to get hold of the key evidence, the prosecution would definitely lose this case. Wu Yuanji frowned. No matter what, he still needed to personally verify this matter. Wu Yuanji got up. He had already decided to assassinate this Miss Little Liang. Although he wasn't sure where she was right now, since she was an important witness who would appear in court tomorrow, Wu Yuanji was certain that she was most likely in the important witness protection room at the police headquarters. The room was heavily guarded, and it clearly wouldn't be easy to break in. But Wu Yuanji wasn't the least bit worried that his movements would be discovered, because a few days ago, he had discovered that he had awakened a special power. It was this power that allowed Wu Yuanji's body to transform into a ray of light and shuttle between screens, allowing the assassination to be carried out invisibly. Elsewhere, everyone in front of the surveillance room at the police headquarters was paying close attention to the scene on the screen. This was a plan to catch Wu Yuanji in the act, and Odd Zhua had long since sensed that he might make a move tonight. Chief Zhao in the headquarters frowned deeply as he looked at the situation. Will this really work? Don't worry, Chief Zhao, we've already taken heavy precautions to protect the witness, Gao Tian said confidently. Considering that the suspect has the ability to shuttle between screens like Sadako, we've also tampered with the computer's power supply so that we can immediately cut it off remotely if necessary. Will this work? Of course it will, Chief Zhao. A junior police officer next to him laughed. As long as the power is cut off, the person will be stuck inside and won't be able to get out. Chief Zhao took a deep breath, then nodded slowly. I understand the principle, but don't you think you've gone a little overboard? This is to protect the witness, how can it not be overboard? Besides, Miss Little Liang is just a 2-year-old girl. It's perfectly legal and reasonable for us to protect her. Reporting, Chief Zhao, Captain Gao, Director Zhua. There's movement. What's going on? We've already detected abnormal intrusive fluctuations through technical means. We suspect that the other party has already infiltrated the network. If you had this kind of technology, why didn't you use it earlier? These are very unusual fluctuations. We need to test them and take precautions. Otherwise it'll be difficult to detect them with normal technical means. The technician wiped at his sweat. He was already a veteran technician with decades of experience, but this was the first time he had seen such abnormal fluctuations. They were even more subtle and difficult to detect than the fluctuations when the gate between worlds had descended, but there was a huge danger hidden within. This is the first time I've seen such fluctuations. They're full of concealment and murderous intent. And they're moving extremely fast, close to the speed of light. It's like. The technician frowned deeply. Like a shadow. Shadow? Everyone at the scene was lost in deep thought at this discovery. The abnormal fluctuations were similar to a shadow, which meant that the other party was most likely using a shadow-type spell to move. There were many shadow spells, and in Huaxiao Alliance's records, there were even sects that specialized in teaching shadow spells. These cultivators could use their shadows to retrieve objects and even fight with them. However, no one had ever heard of using their shadows to kill someone across a screen. To accomplish this, the other party's mastery of shadows had to have reached the point of perfection. Shadow spells are usually bound to the user's body. To travel across a screen and move at the speed of light, the user's body has to be strong enough to withstand the tearing of space. But as far as I know, even the sect leader of Shadow Sect can't do this. Shadow Sect's shadow separation spell can only last 16 seconds at most, Chief Zhao said doubtfully. Then, here was the question. How did a golden core lawyer like Wu Yuanji obtain this kind of power? Could it be that he also ate frozen dumplings? Chapter 1053. To be honest, the moment they sensed the abnormal fluctuations, everyone almost stopped breathing. In the witness room, Miss Little Yang was even more nervous. After all, Miss Little Yang was only 2 years old and still growing up. Of course, the average lifespan of a normal cockroach was about 2 years, but cockroaches in the cultivation world were different. Although Miss Little Yang was already 2 years old, based on the average lifespan of cockroaches in the cultivation world, she was still just a child. By the way, Miss Little Yang was actually Cockroach Wenxiang's daughter, and her full name was Cockroach Little Yang. If Cockroach Wenxiang hadn't forced it, it would never have left its dark and damp little cave to come here and testify for someone else. Cockroaches and humans had never been able to get along with each other for a long time. Miss Little Yang still remembered being chased and beaten up by humans. In fact, the cockroach race had always been very timid, but humans still viewed them as a thorn in their side, and would kill them as soon as they saw any trace of them. Not all cockroaches like to live in dirty places like the sewers. Nowadays, more and more cockroaches were beginning to pursue a materialistic life. Cockroaches in the cultivation world could even voluntarily decompose all kinds of harmful garbage for cultivators. All living things were equal and in an endless cycle. The creatures at the top and the creatures at the bottom formed a cycle of their own. However, it was a pity that not everyone understood this logic. In the witness protection room, Miss Little Yang was a little apprehensive. Just then, a suffocating murderous aura came from the computer screen in Miss Little Yang's room. It was a black shadow that couldn't be seen clearly. But it was clear that this black shadow was also a little baffled by the situation in front of it. Because it didn't see anyone, that Miss Little Yang isn't here? Wu Yuanji, who was in the form of a black shadow, was full of questions. He suspected that he had come to the wrong place, but this was clearly the witness protection room, and it was in use at that. If she wasn't here, where could she have gone? Are you looking for me? Just as Wu Yuanji was full of doubts, a delicate and tender voice came over. It sounded like a little girl's voice, and it was obviously a young Lolita's voice. Wu Yuanji carefully scanned his surroundings and confirmed that there was no one here. There was also no one who used a Lolita voice as a voice actress to trick a rich otaku into tipping 100,000 yuan. The lesson from that live broadcast incident was quite tragic. Wu Yuanji even wanted to defend the rich otaku who had been tricked. The trauma of the soul was sometimes much greater than the physical damage. Are you here for me? Just as Wu Yuanji was confused, the loli's voice sounded again. Wu Yuanji followed the sound and searched the room for a moment. Finally, he confirmed that the sound came from the fish tank in front of him. In the fish tank, there was no fish. A small cockroach was looking up at him. Cockroach. Wu Yuanji was stunned by the scene before him. He was considering the possibility of a problem. Could that legendary Miss Little Yang be? Are you looking for Miss Little Yang? I'm Little Yang. Miss Little Yang's antennae trembled as she gazed at the black shadow. Cockroaches had a natural fondness for shadows, so the moment Miss Little Yang saw Wu Yuanji, she didn't feel the slightest bit afraid. On the contrary, she felt a strange affinity for him. Recovering from his shock, Wu Yuanji laughed wildly in his heart. Crazy. This bunch of people had really gone crazy. They were actually using a cockroach as a witness? How could the application for a witness be approved by such an unreasonable request? But since Wu Yuanji was already here, he naturally couldn't make a wasted trip. Since he had already confirmed that this cockroach was the legendary Miss Little Yang, then, please go to hell, Miss Little Yang, Wu Yuanji had already killed a lot of people who had gotten in his way, so he naturally wouldn't feel any pity for a mere 2-year-old cockroach. The shadow he had turned into began to riot with an extremely vicious expression. Before his palm even landed, a wave of spiritual pressure had already turned into a powerful gust of wind. Bang! The fish tank was directly shattered. Miss Little Yang withstood the enormous spiritual pressure. She felt like she was about to die, and was in a state where she was on the brink of death, and soon fell unconscious. Lowly creature. Wu Yuanji withdrew his palm and sneered disdainfully. It was just a cockroach. If he couldn't even deal with a cockroach, then he, the devil's lawyer, shouldn't be able to survive in the cultivation world. But just as Wu Yuanji was about to leave, the seemingly dead Miss Little Yang actually came back to life. Her antennae twitched, and then she actually flipped over and came back to life. It hurts. I'm only 2 years old, still a child. Can you not use so much force? Why can't we talk things out? Miss Little Yang protested. She was actually still alive? The corners of Wu Yuanji's mouth twitched. Without the slightest hesitation, he slapped Miss Little Yang again. This time, he was sure that he had hit Miss Little Yang. Even a cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand this slap of his. Anyone below the soul formation stage would die on the spot if they were hit directly on the top of their heads. Humph, a mere cockroach still dared to be so arrogant. Wu Yuanji moved his palm away. It was as if he could already see Miss Little Yang's miserable state. It was just a cockroach, he had probably already smashed it into a meat patty, right? Wu Yuanji sneered. However, Miss Little Yang, who had already been flattened, actually bulged up like an inflatable doll and came back to life. Hey! I told you not to use so much force, it's against the law, the protection of minors. Miss Little Yang protested. Wu Yuanji was alarmed by such a tenacious vitality, so the undying cockroach's telepathic message was true. Were cockroaches really unkillable creatures? Wu Yuanji clutched his head, he felt like his worldview was about to collapse. But the truth was that only Miss Little Yang had such a strong vitality, because she was the descendant of cockroach Wenxiang. And what kind of cockroach was cockroach Wenxiang? This was the strongest cockroach that had grown up eating the leftovers of Wang Ling's crispy noodle snacks. The descendants of the strongest cockroach naturally inherited its ability to withstand beatings. Furthermore, Miss Little Yang's strong ability to withstand beatings astonished all the police officers at the police station. Thanks to Miss Little Yang stalling for time, they had already set up a barrier around the entire room while Wu Yuanji had been killing her. They had even cut off the power. The moment the light in the room dimmed, Wu Yuanji, who had turned into a yin state, realized that this was a trap. He was trapped. Gao Tian and Odd Zhua had been waiting at the door for a long time, ready to pull in the net. Odd Zhua, Lawyer Wu, you can't escape. Gao Tian, Lawyer Wu, we will prosecute you for destroying evidence, animal abuse, and cultivating a forbidden spell. You can remain silent. But everything you say will be used as evidence in court. Chapter 1054. On the other side, Fu Fuxing was still waiting in the detention center. Instead of good news, he received the news that Wu Yuanji had been caught alive on the spot. Fu Fuxing instantly felt all his hopes turn to dust. According to the police officers in the detention center, Fu Fuxing's hair had turned a lot white that night. Wu Yuanji had also been put in spirit shackles, and his shadow form had been removed on the spot. When Gao Tian asked Wu Yuanji how he could display such power, Wu Yuanji's answer shocked everyone present. Frozen dumplings. I ate a bag of frozen dumplings, Wu Yuanji said. Frozen dumplings again? Chief Zhao's eyes widened. After hearing Jing Tianxiang's confession, he had gone to buy a bag that night. And it was broccoli-flavored frozen dumplings produced by the Office of Strategic Deception. This bag of frozen dumplings was more expensive than broccoli produced by the Office of Strategic Deception. You might as well buy some broccoli and mash it up to make your own dumplings. What's the filling of the dumplings? Even Gao Tian couldn't help being curious. San Cien. I remember its infant formula, nutritious dumplings for pregnant women, said Wu Yuanji. Why are you eating this? Are you pregnant? Little Silver had a surprised look on his face. My firm also needs to support people. I bought these frozen dumplings in the returned goods section, and they were cheap. Returned goods section again. Gao Tian lowered his head in thought. Returned goods section, frozen dumplings, and nutritious dumplings for pregnant women. The basic information was exactly the same as what Father Zheng had confessed back then. Could it be that some manufacturer had experimented with these frozen dumplings and added illegal drugs? Gao Tian thought of one possibility. It was everyone's responsibility to investigate drugs and illicit drugs, which was something that people all over the world should be responsible for and concerned about. How many families had been destroyed because of these drugs and illicit drugs, and how many anti-drug police officers had been sacrificed on the front lines because of these hateful drug dealers? The crackdown on drugs and illicit drugs should be a national boycott campaign. And new drugs were now emerging endlessly on the market. If someone really used frozen dumplings to make this kind of confusing drug, it would simply be outrageous behavior. Immediately investigate the dumplings thoroughly. It was clear that Chief Zhao had also realized the seriousness of the problem, and he couldn't sit still. But when Odd Zhuo heard about frozen dumplings for pregnant women, a hesitant expression appeared on his face. He remembered that his Shifu's mother, Master Wang, had gotten pregnant a while ago, and it seemed that she had bought a lot of things from the cultivation department store, and frozen dumplings had been on the list. When he had visited the Wang family's small villa before, Mother Wang had been returning the goods because she had bought too many things, and Odd Zhuo remembered that a box of frozen dumplings had been loaded into the truck. So in the return area, there was a box of frozen dumplings that had been in the Wang family's small villa. As for whether this box of frozen dumplings had anything to do with the dumplings that Wu Yuanji and Father Zheng had eaten, Odd Zhuo wasn't sure. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Actually, Odd Zhuo was still a little scared. He recorded this matter and planned to send a message to his master to confirm. He knew that his master loved to enchant things for him to play with. If this frozen dumpling was really enchanted by his master, then everything made sense. After eating the frozen dumplings enchanted by his Shifu, it would be strange if his realm didn't rise quickly. It would be fine if the sudden increase in combat power was used in the right way, but if it was used by people like Wu Yuanji who wanted to use the sudden increase in power to do things that violated the law, not only would it bring trouble to society, but the police station would also be busy. During the interrogation that night, Wu Yuanji confessed to all of his crimes. He had been caught red-handed, and Gao Tian's law enforcement recorder had recorded it on the spot, as well as Miss Little Liang's disability report. Wu Yuanji couldn't defend himself even if he wanted to. Wu Yuanji might be facing a sentence of up to 100 years. This demon of the legal world had stirred up trouble for so long by relying on his knowledge and ruthless methods, but in the end, he couldn't escape the punishment of the law. The next day was September 20th, which was the 37th day of the summer break. Fu Fuxing appeared in court alone. He didn't have a defense lawyer. Because of Wu Yuanji's arrest and the fact that Fu Fuxing had hired Wu Yuanji, the public enemy of the legal world, when Fu Fuxing once again requested to change his defense lawyer, there wasn't a single lawyer in the entire legal circle in Songhai City who was willing to step forward to help him fight this case. Similarly, Miss Little Liang's appearance also shocked the entire cultivation world. When Wang Ling got up in the morning, the class chat group had indeed exploded with chatter. Letting a cockroach act as a witness, no one would have thought that this kind of thing would actually happen. A cockroach. Is that for real? Did my prophecy come true? Super Chin exclaimed. A while ago, he had mentioned that there might be some cockroach or other insects at home who might have seen what had happened. Who would have thought that a cockroach would actually appear in court to testify? Because it was a public trial, a lot of people directly took screenshots of the live stream and sent them to the group. When everyone saw Miss Little Liang state the facts in court with two antennae on her head, they actually couldn't help laughing. Why does this cockroach look a little cute? I've always thought cockroaches were disgusting. Maybe it's because this little cockroach has a Lolita voice. A Lolita voice, sure enough, this was an evil thing, Some people used it to swindle money, and some cockroaches used it to act cute. At that moment, Teacher Pan couldn't help speaking in the group. Students, the facts prove that all living things are equal to begin with. As long as the conservation of living things is maintained, even cockroaches will help humanity develop. This is a very dramatic event, and it's worth all of us thinking about it. Since that's the case, students, teacher will give you another assignment. Everyone, write an essay of no less than 800 words on the topic of cockroaches and humans. The theme must be clear, the idea must be clear, and the positive energy must be promoted. This will demonstrate the special bond and friendship between living things. The class chat group instantly fell into an awkward silence. Teacher Pan wasn't happy. Students, why aren't you saying anything? Do you think the words in the essay are too few? How about this? The first 5 students who raise their hands to answer only need to write 800 words, and the rest of you must write at least 2,000 words. Seeing this, Wang Ling instantly replied with an ellipsis. Very good, congratulations to the first person to write an 800-word essay, Student Wang Ling. Teacher Pan nodded in satisfaction. F***K. Wang Ling, I knew you were spying on us. I've never seen your hand speed so fast before. Superchin couldn't help ridiculing. Chapter 1055. In the end, in the second trial, Fu Fuxing admitted that he had relied on Jing Jingshuan's early works to plagiarize the competition, and at the same time, he exposed the biggest mastermind behind the scenes, Lu Yi. Lu Yi was already dead, and dead people didn't have to bear criminal responsibility, but that didn't mean that civil compensation couldn't be made. Father Zhang's request was very simple. He wanted Raven Studio, which was led by Lu Yi and Fu Fuxing, to compensate for all the illegal profits from student Zhang's early magic treasure designs, a total of 365 million yuan, as well as to publicly apologize to the deceased Jing Jingxian and restore his reputation. At the same time, Father Zhang also requested that the compensation be used as a supplementary prize for the Magic Treasure Design competition, and called it the Jingxian Prize, to encourage participants who could truly design original magic treasures. The above claims were also upheld by the court on the spot. Chief Judge Liang Xian made the final decision. At last, this plagiarism case that had left the Jing family uneasy finally turned around on September 21st, 3 years later, on the 38th day of the summer break. The police officers in charge of the case back then, as well as the judge and the jury, all received disciplinary warnings. They had made a wrong ruling when the facts weren't clear and the evidence wasn't sufficient, which was a fact that the Jing family had been troubled. On the other hand, this also proved that justice was fair, and reflected the courage to admit one's mistakes and to find out the truth. The wrongful case from 3 years ago came to an end, and Father Zhang's family's troubles were resolved. But for Wang Ling, the Wang family's troubles had just begun. He received a text message from Audiobook. It was about the frozen dumplings that Father Zhang and that demon lawyer Wu Yuanji had both mentioned. Because Chief Zhao, the head of the General Police Department, suspected that someone had disguised the dumpling fillings with drugs, he was paying a lot of attention to the origin of the frozen dumplings. Wang Ling couldn't help but raise his guard. What was certain at the moment was that Mother Wang had indeed bought frozen dumplings suitable for pregnant women a while ago, but because it had been an impulsive purchase, she had later returned some of the goods when she came to her senses. This included the box of frozen dumplings. Wang Ling's great enchantment spell had the power to turn something rotten into something magical. He had enchanted a tricycle, a microwave oven, a toilet, and a while ago, he had even enchanted his bedroom door. But he wouldn't be so bored as to enchant a bag of frozen dumplings with such a mystical heavenly Tao spell. The dumplings were perfectly fine. Why did he have to enchant them? So what if he was enlightened? Would it become as crispy noodle snacks after being enlightened? Would a water margin hero card appear from eating dumplings? No. Since it wasn't possible, why did he still need to enlighten it? But he paid particular attention to the origin of these dumplings. He felt that it was necessary to investigate what had happened to this box of frozen dumplings that had been delivered to the small villa. He summed up the changes in Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji after eating the frozen dumplings. First, there was the abnormal growth in the realm. After eating the dumplings, almost all of them reached the nascent soul stage. He had directly crossed an entire realm. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to cultivate from the golden core stage to the nascent soul stage without hundreds of years of cultivation. Secondly, and most importantly, the powers that Jing Tianxiang and Wu Yuanji obtained were all related to the shadow, so there might be some kind of connection between them. And Wang Ling very quickly thought of a possibility. At the same time, in order to confirm his guess, Wang Ling quickly replied to Odd Zhua. He needed to confirm his theory further, which was that he had to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang. But he couldn't go in person. He was just a 16-year-old high school student. Even if Odd Zhua could facilitate his job, if he went to the police station to meet a criminal, it might have a negative impact on him if he was discovered. So, Wang Ling thought of a special method. On the other side, Odd Zhua stared at his phone as he read Wang Ling's astonishing reply. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Possession? That was right. In order to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, Wang Ling decided to use an old-fashioned method, possession from a distance. This was a heavenly Dao spell based on the Great Soul Fusion spell, and Wang Ling could freely choose a person to possess. But at the same time, this spell was very risky. Apart from blood relatives or people with a high degree of rapport, it would be risky for Wang Ling to possess anyone else. This was because not every body with an excessively powerful soul could withstand Wang Ling's torment. It wasn't hard to imagine a body bursting if it couldn't withstand such a powerful soul. The reason why he chose Odd Zhua was very simple. Odd Zhua had been his disciple for several months, and their relationship could be considered close. Most importantly, it was Wang Ling who had taught Odd Zhua the cultivation technique he was currently learning. Thus, Wang Ling judged that it was very unlikely that anything would happen to Odd Zhua's body. Furthermore, even if something did happen, Wang Ling could think of a way to reconstruct Odd Zhua's body. In any case, they were all on the same side, so it wouldn't matter if something went wrong. But it would be different if he possessed someone else's body. Even if something went wrong, Wang Ling would be able to solve it. It might still cause pain to other people. This was the first time Wang Ling had possessed someone else's body, and also the first time Odd Zhua had been possessed by Wang Ling. The last time Odd Zhua had been possessed was when he had accepted Jinka's power. In fact, that couldn't be considered a true fusion, and was just a simple form of enchantment. And Odd Zhua himself still had his own thoughts and consciousness. But if he possessed him, the situation would be different. While Wang Ling was possessing him, Odd Zhua would lose all memory of the time he had been possessed. Thus, when Wang Ling carefully wrote out the precautions for possessing him, he thought that Odd Zhua would be afraid of these obvious side effects. Not everyone could withstand the feeling of being possessed by a foreign body. Some people would even experience stress reactions for a very long time after being possessed, such as vomiting, fatigue, higher body temperature, increased frequency of toilet visits, and becoming irritable. That was right, these stress reactions were similar to the early signs of pregnancy. Wang Ling was worried that Odd Zhua would refuse, so he explained all the possible side effects clearly to him. But who the hell knew that Odd Zhua's reaction seemed to be especially excited? Shifu, when are you coming? GKD Shifu. I can't wait. As your dearest disciple, you must always remember that there will always be a place for you in my body. Chapter 1056. The matter of the magic treasure design case had come to an end, but that didn't mean that Odd Zhua's task was over. The Black Shadow army that had escaped in the Palace of Mirrors was now his primary target to investigate and track down. Huaxiao Alliance had secretly handed this task over to the Office of Strategic Deception, and Odd Zhua was the chief commander representing the Office of Strategic Deception in searching for clues about the Black Shadow army. This organization was far more cunning than Odd Zhua had imagined. Little Silver and Loopy Toad had been working together to search for the aura of the Black Shadow army recently, but to no avail. Even the Lord and Lady of the Castle of the Office of Strategic Deception's intelligence department hadn't been able to intercept any valuable clues. It was very obvious that this Black Shadow army had a strict management system to prevent internal information from being accidentally leaked. This was a very tightly managed organization. And behind such a strict management system, there had to be a huge, unspeakable secret. At that moment, Wang Ling was attached to Audjua's body, while his real body was in standby mode. In standby mode, it was as if Wang Ling had been implanted with an AI system to do some of the things he usually did, which was a little similar to an intelligent takeover state. Fortunately, Wang Ling didn't usually speak much, so even in this takeover state, there wasn't too much of a contrast. It was just that in this takeover mode, Wang Ling wouldn't take the initiative to attack if he encountered danger, and would instead passively defend himself. In layman's terms, he wouldn't fight back if he was hit. He just wanted to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang in Audjua's body to see if their current situation matched up with what he had guessed. It wouldn't take too long, and Wang Ling felt that it wouldn't be a big deal if he left his real body for a while. This was Wang Ling's first time in Audjua's body. Audjua was slightly taller than Wang Ling, and had the body of a fully developed adult. It was just that when he had just entered Audjua's body, Wang Ling suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his back. This was a protruding lumbar disc. It was an occupational disease that had arisen from Audjua's work after he became the director of the general administration of 100 schools. Cultivators also had protruding lumbar discs, which were very difficult to treat. Cultivators had higher bone density than ordinary people to begin with, so it was very painful to press the protruding part back into place after a protruding lumbar disc. Audjua usually suffered from the pain of a protruding lumbar disc, but now that Wang Ling was in his body, Audjua's soul could rest for a short while. Being an adult is really tough, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. The two souls shared one body, and Wang Ling's soul took over Audjua's body. After losing control of his body, Audjua no longer felt the pain of a protruding disc, but he still felt it. Shifu, I don't think I can move my body. Have you already come in? Wang Ling. Don't use this kind of ambiguous question. Master? Master? Audjua continued to ask relentlessly. Helpless, Wang Ling could only answer, Phew. Audjua heaved a sigh of relief. Well, is it comfortable in my body, Wang Ling? Audjua, no. I mean, is Shifu used to using my body? He knew that he had a protruding disc, even though he was relaxed in this state of soul liberation. But she was still worried that he wouldn't be used to his body. The biggest problem with a protruding disc was that the bones in his waist would bulge out bit by bit as he walked, so Audjua had to straighten his waist every time he walked to push the protruding bones back a little. In fact, after the trial of the magic treasure plagiarism case, Audjua's protruding disc had flared up again. He had been lying in bed at home, resting with a piece of soft jade that gave off a cold aura around his waist. Generally speaking, the pain caused by a protruding disc would lessen a lot if he lay down for half an hour. But Wang Ling realized that he couldn't delay any longer. He directly manipulated Audjua's body to teleport to a thicket near Songhai First Prison, and then walked out of it. This wasn't Audjua's first time here, and returning to the prison felt like returning home. Seeing that it was Audjua, the guards at the gate opened the gate one after another without even checking his ID. There were scanners at the prison gates to prevent people from changing their appearance and sneaking in. They could even detect true immortals. Thus, it was almost impossible for someone to disguise themselves as Audjua and sneak into the prison. Only an almighty like Wang Ling, who possessed heavenly Tao, wouldn't give himself away. Director Zhua, you're here again. I've already tidied up the guest room for you. If you're busy today, you can directly stay in there. Wang Ling was stunned. There was actually a private guest room for Audjua in this prison. It seemed that the relationship between Warden Liang and Audjua was indeed extraordinary. The truth was that Warden Liang had always held Audjua in the highest regard. Audjua's performance was linked to Songhai First Prisons. Now that more and more bigwigs had been arrested and sent to Songhai First Prison, the reputation of the prison and Warden Liang's reputation in the outside world had been boosted by several halos. The salaries of all the prison staff had also increased substantially. So when everyone saw Audjua arrive, they all had smiles on their faces. Wang Ling wasn't good at smiling, but in order not to give himself away, he used Audjua's body to make several fake smiles in a row. Although they looked fake, at least he managed to bluff his way through. In the special prison cell, the old devil, master of Immortal Mansion Sheng Yu and evil sword god were still locked up together. Father Zheng and Wu Yuanji, who had just been detained, were locked up in separate high-class cells. These two were high-class prisoners, and after the first trial, Father Zheng was finally sentenced to 8 years in prison, which could already be considered a light punishment. Furthermore, Father Zheng's repentance was pretty good, and he and Wu Yuanji were locked up separately, so the conditions around them weren't too bad. As for Wu Yuanji, he was very miserable. Although it was also a high-class cell, Wu Yuanji's cell was heavily guarded. This devil's lawyer had once relied on his own strength to free a lot of prisoners who had originally been facing heavy sentences. The prison guards of Songhai First Prison had held a deep grudge against Wu Yuanji in those years. Now that Wu Yuanji had been arrested, he would naturally receive some special, preferential treatment. Wu Yuanji. A prison guard walked into Wu Yuanji's cell. In order to satisfy the mental needs of the 3 special felons in the special prison cell, and to prevent them from suffering from mental illness in the prison's enclosed environment for a long time, you are now required to play mahjong with them for an hour every day. Wu Yuanji, when he reached the entrance of the special prison cell, he saw 2 prison guards carrying a prisoner covered with a white cloth out of the cell. The prisoner was about to be sent for emergency treatment. Wu Yuanji, this is. Prison guard, the last one to play mahjong with them. Wu Yuanji, prison guard, don't try to play tricks while playing mahjong. Otherwise, you'll be the next one to be carried out. Wu Yuanji. Chapter 1057. Using Audju's body, Wang Ling felt that it was much more convenient to do things in prison. Audju was like a free pass, and he could go anywhere he wanted. Even in the special prison area, he didn't need to report to Warden Liang. He just needed to let the prison guards know. This wasn't a violation of the rules, since it was Audju who had captured the old devil and his group in the official news report, so it was understandable for him to visit them. Wang Ling decided to go see Father Zheng first. Father Zheng was naturally in a very good mood now that his grievances had been cleared. Even if he had to go to jail, he would accept it. The prison had already prepared a job for Father Zheng. If he worked hard, he might be able to get out earlier with a reduced sentence. Wang Ling met Father Zheng in a factory inside the prison, where he was pouring talisman paper pulp into a machine. This was a talisman factory, and Father Zheng and his fellow prisoners were working on producing talisman paper for drawing talismans. Talismans were a necessity in the cultivation world, and billions of talisman paper were consumed every day. Most of these were cleaning talismans, or purification talismans, and so on, which were used to keep the city clean and filter out poisonous particles in the air, in order to restore freshness to the city and give the citizens a blue sky. To maintain such a large consumption, the production of talisman paper was very important. Thus, 90% of the talisman paper consumed every day was basically produced by prisoners working day and night in various prisons across the country. Talismans like the cleaning talisman were relatively cheap to make, and didn't need to be made of very good paper. It was best to reduce costs and maintain the environment. If they used a large processing plant to import high-grade talisman paper instead, it would be like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. Of course, apart from producing talisman paper, Father Zheng's most important task was to draw talismans. Father Zheng was currently the person with the highest realm in this factory, and he also had some experience in drawing talismans. Not only could he produce thousands of simple talismans like the cleaning talisman in a day, he could also teach his fellow prisoners how to draw them. This way, the prison wouldn't have to hire someone to draw them, and would save a lot of money. Father Zheng's move not only saved the prison money, it could also be considered a way for his fellow prisoners to make a living. After they got out of prison, they definitely wouldn't be jobless. As long as they could draw cleaning talismans, they could join a talisman processing company to make money. Although the salary was not high, it was not a problem for him to support himself. Moreover, as long as one was willing to work in a talisman processing company, one could try to draw higher-level talismans. After a long time, one could also be promoted. Thus, Warden Liang was naturally happy to see this result. This month, it was likely that the red flags of all the major prisons would stop at his Songhai first prison. When Wang Ling arrived at the processing plant, he saw Father Jing working hard from a distance. "Director Zhua, should I bring Jing Tianxiang over to you?" asked a prison guard who was supervising the factory. "Shifu, just wave your hand." Odd Zhua's voice sounded. Wang Ling made a hand gesture in accordance with Odd Zhua's words. The prison guard quickly understood what he meant, and after nodding at Odd Zhua, he quickly retreated. He didn't get too close to Jing Tianxiang. This distance was enough for him to use his soul sense to explore. Standing on the spot, Wang Ling frowned deeply at the information he had obtained from Jing Tianxiang. It was very clear that Father Zhang's newly awakened strength wasn't his own, but an external force. This force was very similar to the shock wave from Mother Wang's fetal movement in the Wang family's small villa. Was it An Wan who had given them strength? Wang Ling never thought that his little sister would actually be stronger than he had imagined. Mother Wang had been pregnant for less than a month, but she already had self-awareness and had even given outsiders strength. And this strength had probably spread from the box of frozen dumplings. This was a surprising result. What a naughty little sister, but at least Wang Ling now knew how his little sister Wang Wan could give others strength. Why did she have to start with frozen dumplings? This was enough to prove that An Wan's current strength couldn't be directly bestowed, and could only be used indirectly. For example, she could inject her own energy into a bag of frozen food, and the person who ate it would become the inheritor of this strength. Apart from this, Wang Ling also realized that Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji's strength had something in common with their shadows. It was as if their shadows had been endowed with some kind of consciousness, and could interact with their bodies in some way. This was also the reason why Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji could borrow the power of shadows to travel back and forth between computer screens. But it was very clear that while shadows were powerful, Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji's awakening wasn't complete. They had been bestowed with the power of shadows, but hadn't been able to unleash their true strength. Using shadows to travel back and forth between screens was just a routine operation. Just as Wang Ling was about to probe deeper with his spiritual senses, a hidden murderous intent came from outside the prison. Songhai First Prison. Ever since the last time Shadow Stream people had broken through the walls to escape, the high walls and barrier around the prison had been reinforced. Not everyone could enter the prison as easily as Odd Zhua. At that moment, someone was looking down at Songhai First Prison from high ground. Bai Yu was dressed entirely in white, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. "Everyone, our mission this time is only Jing Tianxiang and Wu Yuanji. Everyone must capture these two alive." After returning from the world of the Palace of Mirrors, the Black Shadow Army had been waiting for the data on the Shadow Wave. They had divided their strength to monitor Wang Ling's family villa, but they never expected the Shadow Wave to suddenly shift and appear on Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang. Bai Yuquan was overjoyed at this discovery. As long as they could capture these two people with the Shadow Wave, there was hope for them to revitalize their force. Unfortunately, Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, these two idiots, didn't know how to thoroughly activate their formidable power. Prison break, this was tantamount to declaring war. The Black Shadow Army had been quiet for a long time after leaving the world of the Palace of Mirrors. They had been waiting for the right time to announce their force to the world. And now, the opportunity had come. "Shadow Brute, it's your turn," Bai Yuquan said softly. In the crowd, a shadow giant that was 5 or 6 meters tall appeared. His feet shook the ground, and his entire body was wreathed in black shadows. Holding 2 shadow axes in his hands, he directly raised them and charged at the front gate of the prison at Bai Youquan's command. At the same time, Songhai First Prison's most advanced alarm system broke the silence of the night as the shadow giant attacked the gate. Chapter 1058. The sudden attack instantly put Songhai First Prison on the highest alert. Even though the external defense was impregnable, Bai Yuquan had definitely come prepared since he had dared to launch an attack at this time. Thanks to the special power of Destiny Dao, the Black Shadow Army was stronger than cultivators of ordinary realms to begin with. Coupled with the existence of Shadow Brute, this was a powerful siege weapon which Bai Yuquan had specially designed. Shadow Brute wasn't a real human, but a manifestation of the power of destiny Tao. It was shaped like a black shadow and built like a mythical giant, and it gave off a powerful sense of oppression. Under the cover of the black shadow, a chilly wind blew in the face, stirring up the clouds and wind. Team 1, defend. Team 1, defend. Team 2, attack. The entire prison has entered the highest defense mode. Close the cages. Prevent the prisoners from escaping. It had happened suddenly, but fortunately, under Warden Liang's guidance, Songhai First Prison had already taken the appropriate precautions. The prison guards performed their respective duties and immediately launched the first round of defense against Bai Youquan's Black Shadow Army. Some people made hand signs to strengthen the barrier, and some people escaped from the secret exit of the barrier to fight the Black Shadow Army. They only had one task, and that was to stop the enemy's attack in the shortest time possible and kill all the enemy's malice in the cradle. The purpose of attacking the prison was nothing more than to free the prisoners, and the other party's objective for choosing this time to attack was actually very clear. It was likely that they were after that demon lawyer Wu Yuanji and Father Jing Tianxiang. Warden Liang knew that the situation wasn't good, and immediately rushed to the front line to direct the battle. Standing at the entrance to the prison, he snapped his fingers and changed into the warden's custom-made leather combat suit. Have you determined the number of invaders? Lord Warden, there are a lot of them. There are no less than 100 of them. This is a well-prepared invasion. Warden Liang immediately frowned. Call the city police station immediately and ask for reinforcements from the nearest Immortal Arts mobile squad. Yes. After doing all this, Warden Liang's gaze turned to the giant Shadow Brute, who was trying to tear the barrier apart. As the warden, he could tell at a glance that this big guy was probably the most difficult person to deal with. Netherworld chains. With a wave of his hand, 2 chains instantly shot out of the crack in the air like swimming dragons. Following Warden Liang's will, the chains instantly climbed onto Shadow Brute's hands and feet and firmly held it back. Success. As expected of the warden. The crowd was in high spirits. Warden Liang's participation immediately raised the morale of the prison guards and warriors present. The Netherworld flame on the Netherworld chain has the ability to devour spiritual energy. I heard that the spirit shackles were developed based on the Netherworld chain. This big guy probably won't be able to escape now, someone said. Let's charge together. Take down these invaders in one fell swoop. The prison guards brandished their immortal swords with chains in their hands and launched an all-out assault on the Black Shadow Army. But everyone never noticed the figure of the mastermind behind this battle, Bai Youquan. The current situation seemed to be the defeat of the Black Shadow Army, but in fact, everything was under Bai Youquan's control. The Prison Combative Police Regiment, made up of prison guards from all over the country, was a more mature combat police force than the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad, and was currently the strongest official combat group under Huaxiao Alliance apart from the Special Forces. Bai Youquan had wanted to test the strength of the Prison Combative Police Force, but the result was more disappointing than he had imagined. Bai Youquan sighed softly, then murmured softly, "There's no time to play these family games, Shadow Brute." Although his voice wasn't loud, it seemed to give Shadow Brute an even more powerful ability, and the instant Bai Youquan's voice fell, all the Black Shadow Army fell into a frenzy. The Netherworld chain is about to break. Warden Liang turned pale with fright. He never thought that the situation, which had originally been in his grasp, would actually collapse in an instant. Bang! The Netherworld chain was torn apart by Shadow Brute's tremendous strength. In a split second, an explosive power was released, and countless prison guards were sent flying in all directions like ants. The Black Shadow Army's attack was going smoothly, but no one noticed the person observing them from behind the scenes. Wang Ling. Bai Youquan had escaped last time, and now that he had shown up again after much difficulty, Wang Ling absolutely wouldn't miss this rare opportunity to learn. That was right, as a special Great Dao, Wang Ling hadn't mastered Fate Dao. The last time he had learned Divine Dao, it had only been the blink of an eye. But Fate Dao was more special, and Wang Ling needed more time to comprehend it. And the best way to comprehend it was to observe the possessor of Fate Dao up close. Thus, after observing quietly for about 2 minutes, Wang Ling's tightly furrowed brows finally relaxed again. Furthermore, he gave his own assessment of this great Tao of fate. Fortunately, it's not particularly difficult. Shifu, the situation isn't looking good. While Wang Ling was studying, Audrey was extremely anxious. Seeing that the prison barrier was about to be broken, Audrey's heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Don't panic," Wang Ling comforted him. Then, he took a step forward and instantly teleported to the center of the battlefield. The first thing Wang Ling had to do naturally wasn't to kill the enemy. Instead, it was to protect the prison guards. Fortunately, he had learned Fate Tao quickly. Although the prison guards were at a disadvantage, it wasn't an irremediable situation yet. Some of the prison guards had been injured and had fainted on the battlefield. Wang Ling crooked his finger and gathered all the unconscious guards together. At the same time, he cast the great healing spell to instantly heal all their internal and external injuries. In the distance, Bai Yuquan was stupefied when he saw Audrey suddenly appear. This wasn't his first time dealing with Audrey, but Bai Yuquan could never have imagined that Audrey would have such powerful magic power. While he was pondering this, Wang Ling, who was in the air, opened his pure white palm once again. The lines on his palm actually changed in an instant to form a high-level magic array which fell from the sky on the spot to cover all the combat guards. This was a magic array that no one had ever seen before. The runes on it were so obscure and advanced that even Warden Liang was stunned. He never expected Audrey to actually be such a secretive person. "Director Zhua, what is this magic array?" asked Warden Liang. Wang Ling borrowed Audrey's voice to answer, "Big Dipper Bloodlock Array." "What the hell? Bloodlock Array?" Warden Liang felt that he had never heard of this array before. But at that moment, one of Shadow Brute's sharp claws suddenly pierced Warden Liang's stomach. A huge, bloody hole appeared in Warden Liang's belly. With blood flowing and his internal organs destroyed, Warden Liang was logically dead. But then came the problem. Warden Liang actually didn't feel any pain at all. Chapter 1059. The Big Dipper Bloodlock Array. It was one of the branches of the Great Bloodlock spell, one of the 30,000 heavenly Tao that Wang Ling had mastered. Combined with the Great Array spell, it was possible to achieve the instantaneous effect of fusing a spell and array. It was this Great Array spell that gave the lines on Wang Ling's palm a soul-like consciousness the instant it fell, and it swiftly outlined the array that Wang Ling wanted to set up. Then, Wang Ling only needed to press his palm down, and the array would be complete. Shadow Brute was one of the incarnations of Fate Tao, and was extremely difficult to deal with. Warden Liang was very strong, but he still wasn't Shadow Brute's match in terms of true fighting strength. But Wang Ling was well aware that as an incarnation of Heavenly Tao, Shadow Brute didn't have a strong endurance. Once it ran out of energy, it would have to go back and replenish itself, like recharging. It was precisely because of this that Wang Ling had instantly grasped its weakness. There were so many people in the prison combative police regiment that it would be too conspicuous to use the clone spell to provide one-on-one support, so Wang Ling decided to use the Great Bloodlock spell to create an opportunity. There was no heavenly Tao more durable than the Great Bloodlock spell. According to the rules, this heavenly Tao consumed spirit energy every minute and every second, but Wang Ling's primordial qi could be described as inexhaustible. In the end, there were very few freaks like Wang Ling in this world who could ignore energy consumption. No need to panic, everyone. Director Zhua must have anticipated this situation and set up the array in advance. We're all currently in a state of bloodlock, so we won't feel any pain. Take this opportunity to capture all these intruders. Warden Liang roared, and the prison combative police instantly regained their fiery fighting spirit as their fighting spirit was reignited. In the air, Wang Ling watched Bai Youquan's figure from afar. This time, he was using Audrey's body, so he didn't need to worry about who would be the scapegoat. In addition, this was also beneficial to Audrey himself. While he was in Wang Ling's body, Audrey could actually learn a lot of combat skills, such as the angle at which Wang Ling slapped him. Audrey was also able to sense Wang Ling's movements up close while he was in Wang Ling's body. Normally, he probably wouldn't even have been able to see Wang Ling's movements clearly. Audio's heart surged with emotion at this immensely rewarding close-range instruction. He had never thought that one day his body would actually be able to release such a powerful heavenly Dao spell. This Audio is even stronger than in the news reports. Bai Yuquan was also shocked by Audio's sudden attack. He had investigated Audio and found that he was a solid golden core cultivator. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to use such a powerful heavenly Dao spell. But if Audio really was that strong, this attack actually hadn't been a loss. At least they had figured out a potentially powerful enemy. Why not try again? To see how awesome this Audio was? Bai Yuquan suddenly felt a burst of excitement in his heart. He came up with a bold idea. Wang Ling operated Audio's body. Although he hadn't been used to the problem of a protruding disc in the beginning, after a period of getting used to it, he had already completely accepted the configuration of this body. Although it was a far cry from his own body, in any case, this was his disciple's body, and it wasn't as bad as he had imagined. King's eye, Wang Ling raised his fingers and drew a line across his pupil. In a flash, his left eye turned fiery red, and even his pupil split into a three-petaled golden flower. Wang Ling was worried that Audio's body wouldn't be able to withstand the full power of the king's eye, so he only used half of its power. But even half was already fierce enough. Chi! In the air, Wang Ling turned into a beam of golden light as he charged at Bai Yuquan. A powerful destructive force swept through the air, creating a deep gully in the ground as he moved. Bai Yuquan's eyes twitched at such a powerful destructive force, but it was clear that he wasn't an ordinary person. The moment Wang Ling's body passed through him, Bai Yuquan completed his shadow transformation and his body became transparent. Was it the power of shadows again? Wang Ling was now 100% certain that this new black shadow army was inextricably linked to his unborn younger sister, Wang Yuan. Thinking back to how this group of people had retreated so cleanly in the Palace of Mirrors, not leaving a single trace behind, Wang Ling now recalled that it had actually been at that time that Mother Wang had become pregnant with Wang Yuan. Was there really such a coincidence in this world? Wang Ling was aware of the gravity of this matter. They actually dared to set their sights on An Yuan. Aren't these people a little too daring? Wang Ling didn't want to be a siscon, but as an older brother, he had to fulfill his responsibility to protect his little sister. Bai Yuquan, he had to catch this person, and then ferret out the mastermind behind all of this. He remembered that Wang Ming had mentioned to him about the dream, and that there was an imposter who looked exactly like Wang Ling who was managing everything behind the scenes. Not only had President Bai and Devil Gut Fungus Lord been resurrected, even President Bai's son, Bai Yuquan, had been put in an important position by the other party. It was just that at first, Wang Ling hadn't thought that this imposter's real target would actually be Wang Yuan. You can't hurt me. In his shadow state, Bai Yuquan was completely immune to physical attacks. Wang Ling's attack just now had been fierce, but it hadn't hit him. Wang Ling gave Bai Yuquan's arrogance a forward evaluation. Out of 100 secrets, one slip up. When Bai Yuquan came back to his senses, he was astonished to find that a mark had been placed on his soul at some point in time. The physical attack just now had just been a feint. From the very beginning, Wang Ling had been aiming for his soul. The King's Eye Soul Lock. No matter how far you ran, as long as Wang Ling willed it, he could instantly capture the soul shackler and detain him. Even the old devil and evil sword god back then hadn't received this kind of treatment. Wang Ling was too afraid that the other party would run away just like that, and if he let the other party escape this time, who knew when he would get another chance? Compared with investigating on his own, Wang Ling preferred this kind of confident, suicidal behavior. Bai Yuquan had overestimated his strength. At that moment, he saw this terrifying general administration of 100 schools walking toward him step by step. Kneel. Wang Ling stared at Bai Yuquan without the slightest hint of friendliness on his face, but his words were unquestionable. This wasn't a tone of discussion, but a kind of law of heavenly Tao similar to a decree. Once spoken, the law would be enforced. Bai Yuquan's knees couldn't take the pressure after just saying these two words, and they completely bent and hit the ground heavily. Survey, do you think Wang Ling is a siscon? 1. Yes, please reply. 1, 2, no, please reply, 2. Chapter 1060. As the saying went, to catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Now that Wang Ling had taken down Bai Yuquan, the morale of the prison combat police on the battlefield skyrocketed once again. They never expected the legendary director Zhua to actually be someone who hid his abilities. If it hadn't been for him blocking the prison invasion this time, the enemy might have already pierced several holes in their barrier. Not only that, the prison would also have suffered a lot of casualties. If this matter got out, it would definitely have a huge impact on the sense of security of Songhai City's residents. What kind of place was a prison? It was the most heavily defended place in all of Songhai City. If even such a place was breached by criminals, it would undoubtedly be a major blow to people's sense of security. In an era of scientific cultivation, peace had always been the main theme of the world. People had always scoffed at the actions of these thugs, and even resisted and condemned them. Someone once said, if you think your motherland isn't good, you can build it. If you think the government isn't good, you can take the civil service exam to become an official. If you think citizens have no quality, you can start from today and become a high-quality citizen yourself, and use your actions to influence more people. If you think your compatriots are stupid and ignorant, then work hard to learn from them and try to change them, instead of blindly choosing to complain, curse, flee, or even smash and riot. The motherland you are standing on will be like you. If you are in the light, it will not be in the dark. If you are positive, you will no longer listen to the rumors and slanders of those who have given up on themselves. What you can do, what you can say, there is a bit of heat and a bit of light, just like how fireflies can also give off a bit of light in the dark. From now on, if there is no torch in the world, we will be the only light. But unfortunately, there was a small group of people who didn't understand this truth. They held up bricks and proclaimed that they were powerless civilians, turning what should have been a peaceful appeal into a smashing farce. Violence should be stopped at all times. What was more, this was a group of people with unknown origins who were trying in vain to attack the prison. The king's eye had already locked onto Bai Youquan's soul, and he gritted his teeth in an attempt to make a final struggle. He was the leader of this prison break, and naturally had to think of a way to escape. In the next moment, Bai Yuquan curled up on the ground and screamed in pain. Through the king's eye, Wang Ling could clearly see that Bai Yuquan was trying to cut open his own soul. The Tao of Fate was a special type of Grand Tao. Those who possessed the Tao of Fate could borrow life from the river of fate to change their fate and achieve the goal of immortality. This was a great Tao that could manipulate parallel spaces. In other words, if Bai Yuquan gave up his soul here, then in the parallel space, another Bai Yuquan would give up his soul and move into the current Bai Youquan's body. This was the truth of fate. He didn't understand how fate Tao worked at first. But now, everything was different. In reality, Bai Youquan's train of thought was feasible. His soul had been locked by the king's eye, so as long as he cut and replaced it, he would be able to escape the king's eye's soul lock. You want to use fate Tao to transfer a new soul from a parallel dimension? Wang Ling fixed his eyes on Bai Yuquan. Bai Youquan's soul trembled at these words, and he felt like his thoughts were being stolen. You, having been seen through, Bai Youquan's expression was one of desperation. So what if you see through me? You can't stop me at all. He roared at Wang Ling, then dug a space tunnel with his bare hands and rushed inside like a fleeing mudfish. As Bai Yuquan fled, he endured the double pain of having his soul cut and being transferred. If it was just his physical body that was damaged, he could freely move a new body from a parallel space to his own. Those who had mastered Fate Tao could move at least 10,000 parallel spaces and use them for themselves, which was equivalent to having 10,000 lives. When necessary, they could fully unleash Fate Tao and even transfer the strength of everyone in 10,000 spaces to themselves. But that was a solitary act, and was also the ultimate profound meaning of Fate Tao. 10,000 elements returned to one. Once he did this, 10,000 lives would be gathered in one body. If he died, he would really die. Bai Yuquan didn't have the guts. Besides, his Fate Tao was a power given to him by someone else, and could only manipulate 100 spaces. If he used 10,000 elements returned to one, and died, all the existences in the parallel spaces would be instantly erased. Bai Yuquan would no longer exist in the entire universe. Hurry up a bit more. Enduring the pain of the soul transfer, Bai Yuquan allowed his body to float in the space tunnel as the spatial storm tore at it. Compared with the pain of his soul, the torture of his physical body was nothing to Bai Yuquan. But very quickly, Bai Yuquan realized that something unexpected had happened during the soul transfer. A force seemed to be preventing him from transferring power from the parallel spaces. In the next moment, Bai Yuquan realized that a crack had actually appeared at the bottom of the space tunnel, and a golden red eye was staring at him from the center of the crack. Bai Yuquan was instantly sucked into the crack. When Bai Yuquan came back to his senses, he fell to his knees in front of Wang Ling once again. Using the space crack, Bai Yuquan thought that he had already fled tens of thousands of li away. But in the blink of an eye, the king's eye chased after his soul. Bai Yuquan was pulled back in front of Wang Ling. Distance to inches. No matter how Bai Yuquan escaped, he couldn't shake off Wang Ling's pursuit. "It's you stopped me?" Bai Yuquan's soul wasn't replaced by another soul from the parallel space as he had hoped. He stared at Wang Ling with an incredulous expression on his face. You're not Audiobook." Bai Yuquan could see that something was wrong, but what could he do? Even if Bai Yuquan said it, no one would believe the words of a criminal. Wang Ling pointed a sword at Bai Yuquan. His voice echoed in Bai Yuquan's mind. "I've already devoured your fate Dao. Now, you only have one life. You have mastered fate Dao." Bai Yuquan didn't dare believe it. It was as if he had already guessed the identity of the person hiding in Audiobook's body, but he didn't dare say it aloud. "Is it very difficult?" Wang Ling crouched down and stared at Bai Yuquan. He stretched out one hand and pinched Bai Yuquan's chin. "Tell me, what's your purpose?" "Survey, Bai Yuquan's life or death is up to you. Reply to a digital poll. 1. Write him to death. 2. Keep him alive to continue torturing him." Chapter 1061. Bai Yuquan wanted to struggle, but found that he didn't have the strength to break free from Wang Ling's palm. In fact, under normal circumstances, Wang Ling could choose to forcibly search a person's memory if they didn't want to confess. Unfortunately, he couldn't use this trick on Bai Yuquan. Although Wang Ling had already taken back Fate Dao from the furniture on Bai Yuquan still possessed Fate Dao. Once Fate Dao was used, Bai Yuquan's memory space would become chaotic, and the memories of all sorts of Bai Yuquan from different parallel worlds would intertwine like paste, making it difficult to distinguish them. Wang Ling wasn't in a hurry to interrogate him. After all, Audiobook was still around, and it was just right for his disciple to handle this sort of miscellaneous task. After using the Great Sealing spell on Bai Yuquan, Wang Ling returned to his original body. Bai Yuquan could now be said to be a shrimpy without a shell, completely useless. What was even more terrifying was that as the leader of the Black Shadow Army, Bai Yuquan would be sent to the special prison cell to meet up with the Mahjong trio. This was also the first time that the Mahjong room had 4 people, so there was no need to go to other cells to make up the numbers. It would take some time to interrogate Bai Yuquan, and this sort of thing couldn't be rushed. At the very least, through Bai Yuquan's invasion of the prison this time, Wang Ling had figured out the Black Shadow Army's objective. It was obvious that the other party was after his sister Wang Wan. The reason why they had their eyes on Jing Tianxiang and Wu Yuanji was probably because his sister Wang Wan had given them a special kind of power. Judging from the old Wang family's ancestral genes, Wang Ling felt that Wang Wan's ability was probably a special kind of great Dao, which was on the same level as heavenly Dao, divine Dao and fate Dao. Furthermore, this ability was similar to fate Dao in that it was a gift. It could activate a person's shadow and give them a rapid boost in strength in a short period of time, and at the same time, gain the ability to manipulate shadows. Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang's ability to manipulate shadows was clearly only the most basic. If it was the power of Great Dao, the gift definitely wouldn't be so simple, so this time, Wang Ling was completely shocked. His sister hadn't even been born yet, and she had been in Mother Wang's belly for less than half a month, but she had already learned to cause trouble. Once she was born, she would definitely be a red-flamed devil mo xiao bei. September 22nd, the 39th day of the summer vacation. Songhai First Prison had been attacked by an unknown force. While inspecting the prison, Audjua had led Warden Liang to successfully defend against the enemy. Not only had the entire prison's combat police been saved, but they had also arrested the leader of the unknown force as well as a 100-strong invading gang. Audjua's reputation became even greater than before. Last night, the scene of Wang Ling possessing Audjua's body and using a heavenly Dao spell had been perfectly recorded by the surveillance cameras. Although no one understood what spell it was, just looking at the cryptic and complex array symbols of the Big Dipper blood lock array was enough to stun them. Some of Audjua's peers, in particular, were secretly anti-fans who advocated that Audjua only looked impressive and didn't have any real ability. Because Audjua didn't have reliable battle footage as evidence every time, he basically ran off to claim credit afterward, which made a lot of people feel dissatisfied. How could such a person be the commander? But the fighting strength that Audjua had displayed last night instantly rendered this bunch of haters speechless. Forget that smooth fighting posture, they couldn't even find the array runes that he had set up in the dictionary. Thus, the moment the surveillance footage was released, Audjua's reputation among his peers instantly soared, and he was even given a new nickname, the man who secretly tutored others behind their backs. Wang Ling paid close attention to the interrogation, and would immediately report back to him if there was any progress on Audjua's side. As for Wang Ling, he was also worried about two things. Based on the fluctuations coming from Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, Wang Ling judged that while it was Wang Yuan who had given them their abilities, she hadn't done it on purpose, it had been an unintentional mistake. Wang Yuan had been pregnant for 10 months, and it was likely that there would be a lot of fetal movements during this period. Wang Ling was already very proficient at drawing talisman seals, so he wondered if he should draw one for An Yuan as well. That way, he could at least prevent Wang Yuan's energy from leaking out when she was rolling around in her belly. So that morning, while the news was playing about Audjua, Wang Ling and Father Wang brought up Wang Yuan. Drawing talisman seals required an additional fee, which was roughly 1,000 HNY for talisman paper and special raw materials. This wasn't a lot of money. In fact, as long as Wang Ling used his identity as Ling Zhenren to ask anyone in the group for the money, no one would refuse. But Wang Ling wasn't in the habit of asking outsiders for money. Family matters were internal affairs, and since they were internal affairs, they should be dealt with internally. This was also one of the family rules that Father and Mother Wang had set for Wang Ling since he was young. After listening to the whole story, Father Wang pushed up his glasses and put down the coffee in his hand. Not a bad idea. But you have to earn this money yourself. Let me remind you, you have to earn it with the ability of a high school student at an ordinary cultivation school. That is to say, you can only earn it at the late foundation establishment stage at most. If you exceed this realm, I'll deduct 200 HNY from your allowance next month. Wang Ling had thought that Father Wang would agree right away, but he hadn't expected his biological father to actually ask him to earn it himself. As expected of his biological father, it's not a lot of money, and it's not like I can't give it to you. But Ling Ling, think about it carefully, this is how a big brother feels about his little sister. If the talisman you drew for your little sister is made from your own blood and sweat, I believe that An Yuan will be very touched after she's born. Father Wang said earnestly and patted Wang Ling on the shoulder. Think of a way on your own first. If there's really no other way, Dad will still give you the money. These words were impeccable, and in the end, Wang Ling couldn't find an excuse to reach out. Looking at Wang Ling's back as he went upstairs, Father Wang felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. In order to ensure that old Wang's brother and sister would live in harmony in the future, Father Wang had long since decided to groom Wang Ling into a siscon from the moment Mother Wang had become pregnant with Wang Yuan. At this point in time, it actually wasn't over yet, and so, the second thing that worried Wang Ling came, working. He, a 16-year-old high school student, working, would anyone want him? Wang Ling was deeply doubtful about this. Wang Ling decided to first calculate what he could do. The Wang family's working rules forbade him from using his innate heavenly Dao ability to earn money. That was to say, the fact that Wang Ling could easily use heavenly Dao spells to earn money was directly overruled by this law. So, aside from these whimsical jobs, what else could he do? Become a temporary salesperson in a convenience store? Hand out leaflets on the streets? Or work at a Kaifeng restaurant? Little survey, where do you think Wang Ling should work? Chapter 1062. In short, Wang Ling's current problem was where to find a job. If he couldn't use heavenly Dao, it would be a little difficult to earn money. Otherwise, he could use the heavenly ear ability to connect to signals from other parallel spaces and casually copy music scores for money, earning tens of thousands of dollars in minutes. But copying music scores wasn't very pleasing, because readers would suspect him of exaggerating the number of words. But while he couldn't use heavenly Dao, Wang Ling's physical fitness was still there. He had considered whether or not he should become someone's sandbag. In any case, he wouldn't be injured even if he got beaten up. The problem was, if that person died from the backlash, he would be done for. When the Shadow Stream killers had attacked number 60 high previously, he could still vividly remember the death of the boss killer who had suffered the backlash. The grass on the other party's grave was already dozens of meters tall, right? So after some serious thought, Wang Ling started to ask Super Chen, Dopey Gua, and the others for their opinions in the private chat group. Work? Super Chen directly replied in the group, then Wang Ling, don't even think about serving tea and water in the catering service. Wang Ling? Wang Ling, you can't even smile, there's no way you'll get a job there. Also, there's a high chance that you'll get a complaint. I heard that if you get a complaint there, you'll be fined. If you work there with a poker face, you might end up paying them hundreds of yuan a day. You don't say. I know about Wang Ling's situation, and there's a job that suits him quite well. At that moment, Dopey Gua suddenly came up with an idea. What job? Little Peanut was also interested. He can go to a cultivation film and television base as an extra. It's hard money, and they also need student actors. I've introduced a lot of bros from other classes to them, but they don't last long. Why? Because they'll laugh in the middle of acting. It's clearly an extra, and in many cases, they just need to play dead. I think this job suits Wang Ling very well. Just as Dopey Gua finished speaking, Wang Ling directly replied with 2 words, I'm counting on you. Wang Ling had never thought about debuting as an idol, but he felt that he was very suited to be an extra. However, it wasn't easy to take this route. Usually, new, small-time actors wouldn't have any work to do for a long time. They couldn't even afford to eat. They could only wait by the roadside of the film and television base, waiting for production crews that needed more people to come and recruit them. If they were lucky, they could earn 100 or 200 yuan if they followed the crew for a day. If he was lucky enough to be chosen by the director to say a few lines or something, he could even earn a few thousand a day as a walk-on. If it wasn't enough, it would only happen in a few cases. In the afternoon, Wang Ling invited Dopey Gua to Songhai Film and Television Base. Film and television bases actually weren't rare nowadays, but Songhai City's film and television base won in terms of scale. As an international multicultural exchange center, Songhai City was naturally favored by many film crews as well as famous directors, both at home and abroad. The more space there was, the more places he could use his fists and feet. Nowadays, when cultivators make movies, they no longer need to rely solely on special effects. Many explosive scenes can be created by 2 cultivator actors fighting. Moreover, the key is that they look very realistic, much better than cheap special effects. They even saved on the cost of special effects. Thus, a lot of the movies on the market nowadays were made up of cultivators fighting with special effects. Special effects didn't need to be lavished with money anymore. They just needed to add a little sublimation to the original foundation to make some explosions and fighting scenes look more gorgeous. Wearing his school uniform, Wang Ling waited for a while by the stone tablet with the words Songhai Film and Television Base on it, and soon saw Master of Dopey waving at him from a distance. Wang Ling didn't know why he was wearing his school uniform for the time being, but since he could make money, it didn't matter. As for Dopey Gua himself, he was also wearing his school uniform. "Let's go, I'll take you in." Dopey Gua took out the actor ID that he had prepared in advance and hung it on his chest. Wang Ling was a little dazed when he saw this decent ID. "It's fine. There'll be an assessment later. I have an uncle in the assessment department, so you just have to deal with it. Once you have an actor ID, it'll be easier for you to enter the base. Under normal circumstances, one ID can only bring one person in. It's a kind of referral," Dopey Gua said as he explained the rules of the film and television base to Wang Ling. Wang Ling was about to ask why he had to come in his school uniform, but Dopey Gua just started talking. "It's quite a coincidence. That uncle of mine just happened to want to shoot a big online movie with a school theme, and he's still missing 2 people. He wanted me to bring one person in, and I was just about to look for someone else, but Wang Ling, you just happened to want to work." "Ha ha ha. A school theme?" asked Wang Ling. "Yes, this movie is a little amazing. Not only is it a school theme, it's also set in our school. It's also about senior joie. Wait a minute, I'll send the script to our private chat group." Because of the confidentiality agreement, the script couldn't be made public for the time being, so they couldn't send it to their small group. But since Wang Ling had joined them, Dopey Gua thought it was fine to send it to him. He created a new small group exclusively for him and Wang Ling, and sent the script to the 2 of them. The group was called Oscar Best Actor. Dopey Gua explained the script to Wang Ling as he led him to the place to apply for an actor's ID. Wang Ling opened the file that Dopey Gua had sent him, and at the top of the file was a huge line of movie title. Wang Ling immediately took a deep breath, because the movie was called Audiobooks Devil Child Descends. Wang Ling heard from Dopey Gua that it wasn't the film crew who had approached Audiobooks about this, but Wang Ling had directly asked Headmaster Chen for permission to shoot the movie. Considering that number 60 High was about to be upgraded to a key city high school, Headmaster Chen felt that they could use this opportunity to do some publicity, so he had agreed. And most importantly, this movie was being directed by a famous director called Feng Yue. Of course, what surprised Wang Ling the most wasn't the movie title or the director, it was the content of the movie. When Wang Ling flipped through the file and saw the synopsis of the movie, he was completely dumbfounded. The synopsis of the movie was as follows: 6 years ago, the gate between worlds descended and gave birth to a chaos bead. With the combined efforts of numerous experts in the cultivation world, the chaos bead was refined into a demon bead and an immortal pill. The number 1 sect in the cultivation world, number 60 sects, set up a great array and destroyed the demon bead 3 years later. The head of number 60 sects ordered his eldest disciple, Hirogua, to inject the immortal pill into Audiobooks' body. In the end, due to a freak combination of factors, the immortal pill was replaced, and Audiobooks, who was supposed to be born from the immortal pill, became the embodiment of the devil path. However, Audiobooks wasn't swayed by his fate. He upheld the beliefs of number 60 sects and punished evil all the way, but because of the demon bead, he was misunderstood as a devil who committed all sorts of evil, and was repeatedly made a scapegoat for others. Faced with this situation, what should he do? Chapter 1063. Wang Ling suspected that this script might have been written by Super Chen or a relative of Super Chen's family. Even the scapegoat setting had been perfectly incorporated into the plot, which was simply too realistic. An exam was required to issue an actor's certificate, and the examiner would set the exam questions. Hirogua had pulled Wang Ling in through his connections, and the topic had already been decided long ago. Wang Ling was in the second batch of 6 people. As for the content of the performance, it was very simple. They had to act as a person with facial paralysis who couldn't laugh. The examiner would tell them a joke, and they would pass as long as they didn't laugh. Wang Ling felt that this exam question was simply tailor-made for him, and wasn't difficult at all. After the first batch of 6 people entered, the examiner announced the exam questions for the first batch. The content of their performance was the scene of a typhoon passing by. The first person played the role of a tree. He raised his arm and let out a whooshing sound. Then, he fell to the ground. The second, third, fourth and fifth people all imitated each other, and the examiner in charge of the assessment was disappointed. It was one thing for the first person to act like this, but in the end, everyone else had to imitate it, which was meaningless. Acting was an art in itself, and diversity was what mattered. Just as the examiner was sighing, the examiner's gazes fell on the last person. This person was a fatty who seemed to weigh more than 160 Gene. He stood there motionless like a mountain. "Examiner, sir, what are you acting as?" The fatty replied, "I'm acting as Shanghai Fortress." Examiner. Pass. Wang Ling and Hirogwa. It was finally Wang Ling's turn in the second batch, and he entered the exam hall with the other 5 candidates. He looked at the age of the people next to him. They probably weren't much younger than him, and all had very young faces. It wasn't easy to make a living these days. More than 60% of young people nowadays like to become live streamers, and in order to gain popularity, they would resort to almost anything. Being an actor might be a little hard, but at least it was an industry that relied on ability to make a living. Acting skills could be honed over a long period of time, and if one day you were chosen by a director, you might have a chance to turn things around. It was hard, but it was much better than those who use tricks to attract attention. Next, I'll tell you a joke, but I hope you can keep your composure and not laugh. This is the assessment requirement for your batch. As long as you don't laugh, you will pass, the chief examiner said. Then, examiner, do you know how to laugh? At this moment, a young man who was not afraid of death asked. Smile? Of course not. We're professionals. No matter how funny it is, we won't laugh, unless we can't help it. The examiner glanced at them and began telling a joke from the book. Once upon a time, there was a temple, and in the temple, there was a foolish monk. Ha 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 ha, the examiner was laughing so hard that he was rocking back and forth, directly falling down from his chair. The other judges couldn't help but frown when they saw this. Isn't this old Chen acting a little too much? Yeah, a little bit. However, his acting skills were indeed good. It was no wonder that he could become a judge. Look, old Chen's twitching is so realistic. His entire body is trembling. I don't think anyone here can tremble as evenly as old Chen, right? I've seen old Chen's joke before. It's not funny. For old Chen to be able to put on such a good performance in front of everyone, it goes to show his superb acting skills. Look. Old Chen seems to be foaming at the mouth. He's even foaming at the mouth. How wonderful. And did you see that? He can actually roll his eyes. It's really the details. It really is the details. He even thought about rolling his eyes. But there's still one thing I don't understand. What? Rolling his eyes isn't hard to act, but what's with the red veins in his eyes? How did he do it? Not good. Old Chen isn't acting. He's really laughing. And he's about to pass out from laughing. As soon as the examiners said this, the second batch of examinees finally couldn't hold it in anymore and roared with laughter. The examiner had told them not to laugh when he had given them the exam question, but in the end, they had passed out from laughing on the spot. Was there a funnier joke than this? Thus, Wang Ling was the only expressionless one among the 6 people in the second batch. This really couldn't be blamed on the second batch of examinees, because the other examinees who were still waiting in line outside the exam venue also burst out laughing at this little episode. Some of them laughed so hard that they had to squat down on the ground and hold their stomachs. Wang Ling was the only one whose expression didn't change in the slightest. It could only be said that the legendary poker face really lived up to his reputation. Hero Guo was touched by Wang Ling's composure. Sure enough, his decision to recommend Wang Ling was the right one. Thus, 10 minutes later, the examiners gave Wang Ling an actor's certificate from the second batch of examinees, and he was the only one who had obtained an actor's certificate from the second batch of examinees. When the certificate was issued, one of the examiners gave Wang Ling an admiring look. Student, you're too awesome. Us examiners are about to pass out from laughing, but you're actually not the least bit affected. He's like this at school too. Hero Guo put his arm around Wang Ling's shoulder and couldn't help feeling proud. So this kid is your classmate? The examiner was amused. He didn't know Wang Ling, but he knew Hero Gua. Many of the directors on the set were his uncles. Thus, Hero Gua didn't lack pocket money. As long as he didn't have any money, he would come here to act. Sometimes, he could earn a few hundred yuan by lying down for a day. This time, it could be said that Hero Gua was lucky. It just so happened that a big online movie about number 60 high was going to be shot at this film base, and Hero Gua had been introduced to the crew to play a minor role. This supporting role didn't have many lines, it was just 3 sentences in total. But it was already very impressive for a minor role to have 3 sentences, and most importantly, he would be in front of the camera. Hero Gua imagined that if he took this opportunity to debut, wouldn't that be wonderful? When that time came, he would be the second Lu Shufan. The second Wu Yuanxi. Let's go, Wang Ling, I'll take you to the set. Full of excitement, Dopey Gua finally took Wang Ling to the set of Audiobook's Descent of the Devil's Child. This was Wang Ling's first time on set, and the on-site director was directing the filming in a very enchanting pose. Actor. Lights. Action. Hero Gua led Wang Ling around. At a time like this, the biggest taboo was for unrelated personnel to walk around. A lot of new actors would accidentally walk into the camera, and their painstakingly shot would go to waste. But Dopey Gua was already a wily old fox, and he knew the situation very well. When he brought Wang Ling to the executive director, the latter looked him up and down. "Is this the classmate you were talking about?" "That's right, uncle." Dopey Gua nodded. "Not bad, he looks pretty good." The executive director nodded. "Then which scene will my classmate be in?" "Let him try in the next scene." "There's a fight scene where your classmate just lies on the ground," the executive director said. If we use the black ball, it will be more realistic than the special effects. If you don't like the ball, I can't explain it to the director. The prop team guy was also very helpless. The shoot was about to start, and Tong Ling didn't have time to waste with the prop team. He frowned, but still accepted the meatball and put it in his mouth. In the blink of an eye, Tong Ling's body underwent a huge change along with the black special effect pill. His entire body began to be surrounded by black gas, and even his hair and nails grew longer. The muscles all over his body swelled up, and he actually turned into a burly man. This wasn't the first time Tong Ling had taken a special effect pill, but the changes brought about by this special effect pill still shocked Tong Ling. "Brother Tong, don't worry. This medicine will lose its effect in 3 days. When the time comes, you will be able to return to your original state." The young man from the prop team smiled. "Bastard. 3 days." Tong Ling roared, and black smoke billowed out of his mouth like an overwhelming black dragon as it surged toward the prop team guy. Tong Ling wanted to cry but had no tears to shed at this scene. His image. This time, it was really ruined. It was really too difficult for him. Action. At the director's command, Tong Ling began his performance in his demonized state. This was a performance without any lines, it was almost all a roar, and then a concentrated bombardment in all directions. This was where Tong Ling's usefulness was reflected. The truth was that he was a genuine martial arts actor, and almost all the scenes he received were related to martial arts. Furthermore, Tong Ling's realm was very high, and he was at the nascent soul stage. A nascent soul cultivator could cast even more spells. Tong Ling had traveled extensively over the years, and in order to meet the requirements of all the major production crews, he had learned a lot of different spells and understood a lot of things, which was why he was deeply loved by the production crews in the entertainment circle. According to the script, Tong Ling closed his eyes and floated in the air. After making a few Chinibu gestures, he started to prepare the spell in his hands. Wang Ling lay motionless on the ground. But very quickly, his body sensed something strange. For some reason, his eyelids, which hadn't twitched in a long time, actually twitched at that moment. Eyelid warning? Could it be that something dangerous was about to happen? Wang Ling sensed something strange, but he didn't show it. He was now playing a dead man who had died with grievances. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Tong Ling in the air, who was surging with demonic qi, without the slightest ripple of emotion on his face. Not bad. Where did you find this cameo? He's very promising. Seeing this scene, the director couldn't help performing. He's my nephew's classmate. The director laughed. So it was that kid Hirogwa who found him? He's finally found someone reliable. The people he introduced before weren't good, and kept moving around. In the end, he's just a young man who hasn't seen much of the world, and is too impetuous. Director, you're right, this kid isn't bad. The director showed his fondness for Wang Ling again. And this kid's looks aren't bad. Why do I feel like I like him more and more the more I look at him? Everyone, is he usually like this at school? At that moment, the director turned to look at Hirogwa. Yes, director. He's sitting next to me. When my uncle told me that he wanted to find an actor to play a dead man, to be honest, he was the first person I thought of. There's no one more suitable than him to play a dead man. For some reason, there was a strong sense of pride in Dopigua's tone when he said this. Wang Ling, dozens of seconds later, Tong Ling's first attack was finally launched. This was a lethal spell, Purple Flame Beam Cannon. The name sounded awesome, and the momentum it produced was also very astonishing. The light wave blasted down like a rail gun, creating a huge explosion on the ground. Wherever it passed, gravel flew, and thick smoke rose. Tong Ling had wanted to tease Wang Ling before the start of the performance. He deliberately controlled the angle of the beam so that some of the gravel and dirt that had been blasted away would fall on Wang Ling's body. Watching helplessly as he dirted this youngster actually gave Tong Ling a sense of joy. But very quickly, Tong Ling realized that something wasn't right with the situation. He didn't know what was wrong. He couldn't stop his purple flame beam cannon. Chapter 1066. For some reason, the moment Tong Ling wanted to tease Wang Ling, he felt as if his body was being firmly controlled by an external force. An evil force was manipulating his body, constantly extracting his spirit energy and releasing light waves in all directions. If this went on, Tong Ling felt like he was going to be squeezed dry. The purple flame beam cannon swept the ground, sending dirt flying. The more the chief director stared at the image, the more he felt that something wasn't right. Crack. The director called for a cut. It didn't work. In the air, Mr. Tong Ling still looked like he had forgotten himself and was letting loose. Who can tell me what's going on? Mr. Tong Ling seems to be out of control. Out of control? Why was he out of control? The indiscriminate attack, which was completely out of the script, was already a threat to several minor actors in the green safety zone. Don't shoot at me. Mr. Tong Ling. Wake up. Ah. My blazing biceps. Someone had been hit by the purple flame beam cannon. And let out a painful scream. For a moment, the scene descended into chaos. No one had expected something like this to happen. Wang Ling. Hirogwa thought of Wang Ling. He took out his spirit sword and wanted to rush in to save him. On the side, the executive director pulled him back. Nephew Big. It's dangerous. Uncle. Quick, think of a way to save him. Hirogwa was anxious. He was the one who had introduced Wang Ling to this job. Furthermore, Wang Ling was his most adorable desk mate. If Wang Ling died just like this, who else could he find to copy homework with such clear handwriting in the future? Amid the smoke, Wang Ling slowly opened his eyes. It seemed that what his eyelid had warned him about was related to Tong Ling losing control. Hearing the commotion around him, Wang Ling could already confirm that Tong Ling had lost control. Furthermore, he sensed a very familiar aura from Tong Ling. It was the same aura that he had sensed from Wu Yuanji and that Father Zheng. Wang Ling guessed that this Mr. Tong had also eaten frozen dumplings. The box of frozen dumplings that Mother Wang had returned back then had contained 12 packets. That was to say, those frozen dumplings which had been given the power of shadow might have been bought by 12 people from the discount returned area by chance, and after eating them, they had gained the power of shadow. Wang Ling lay motionless on the ground as he stared at Tong Ling, who had lost control of himself. He could clearly sense the trajectory of the purple flame beam cannon and predict what would happen in the next 300 seconds. He was certain that Tong Ling would not hurt him. At this stage, it was best to not make a move, because the director had said that if they acted recklessly, the money would be deducted. It hadn't been easy for him to get such an easy job, and he didn't want to waste it. Moreover, he had a premonition that Tong Ling's spiritual power had already reached a state of depletion. As long as the spiritual power in his body was used up, the attack would completely stop. Therefore, about 3 minutes later, the set returned to peace. Wang Ling picked himself up from the dirt and shook off the dust on his body. In the distance, Hero Gua threw himself at him with a face full of snot and tears. F***K. Great, Wang Ling. You're not dead. If you die, who will copy my homework for me in the future? The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched in disdain. This guy only had this much to offer. Wang Ling walked out of the safe zone unscathed, which shocked the entire audience. He had clearly been in the most dangerous red zone, which was the area most heavily impacted, but in the end, he had still been able to lie on the ground like a corpse in the face of danger. Such professionalism instantly made the veteran actors on the set lower their heads in shame. This kind of operation, they couldn't learn. Classmate Wang, you're really amazing. All the directors on the set were stupefied on the spot. Staring at Wang Ling, whose face was covered in dirt, they didn't know what to say for a moment. Wang Ling was silent as he stared at the director with a hopeful look in his eyes. The director couldn't resist this kind of professional look. Classmate Wang, I know what you mean. Don't worry, if I make a show in the future, I'll definitely look for you. Your professionalism is worthy of all of us to learn from. But classmate Wang, when it's time to run, you still have to run, you know, what if you hurt yourself? Wang Ling sighed slightly at the director's words. Of course, he wasn't talking about whether Wang Ling was professional or not. The reason why he was still lying there in the midst of the chaos was naturally because of his salary. After being Wang Ling's deskmate for more than half a year, Wang Ling didn't like to talk much, but after half a year of interaction, they still had a tacit understanding. Hero Gua understood the meaning behind this. Uncle, that's not what my classmate means. Then what? He wants you to pay your salary. Thus, Wang Ling happily took 1200 HNY home that day. 1000 HNY was Wang Ling's salary, and the extra 200 HNY was the director's mental consolation money. As for the TV series Birth of Audio's Devil Child, they couldn't continue shooting it for the time being. There was a problem on the set, and Tong Ling had gone out of control, causing damage to the environment of the film and television base. This incident very quickly became a hot topic on Weibo, and a lot of people had different opinions as to why Tong Ling had gone out of control. The truth was that after Tong Ling had released all his spirit energy, Wang Ling had used his Great Seal spell to seal off the power of shadow in his body. Like Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, Tong Ling had unknowingly obtained this power, and naturally didn't know how to properly use Shadow Dao. Without being able to display its power, Wang Ling couldn't imitate Fate Dao like he could. And it was precisely because of today's incident that his unborn little sister had thoroughly attracted Wang Ling's attention. Making the seal was one thing, and Wang Ling now had enough funds. Of course, another very important thing was to find the remaining 9 friends who had accidentally eaten the frozen dumplings. Wang Ling was determined to do this. As an older brother, it was normal for him to clean up his little sister's mess, but there were so many people in Huaxiao Nation that it would be really difficult to find friends who had eaten the 9 packages of frozen dumplings. There was no other way, and Wang Ling could only seek help from the heavenly Tao once again. The Heavenly Tao Equivalence Array. After Wang Ling drew the familiar array diagram in the room, Loopy Toad came over with an excited look on its face. It hadn't seen the Heavenly Tao in a while, and it missed it very much. When Wang Ling summoned the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man, he and Loopy Toad were utterly shocked by the scene in front of them. The summoned Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man was lying on the ground, its stomach rumbling, and it looked like it was about to starve to death. Had he already squeezed the Heavenly Tao so hard that it couldn't even afford to eat? Wang Ling was suspicious. Was he that savage? Chapter 1067. Ever since Wang Ling had looked for the Heavenly Tao to exchange for crispy noodle snacks, the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men had been having a hard time. The key was that they couldn't refuse Wang Ling's crispy noodle snacks at all. Even expired crispy noodle snacks had a kind of magical power that the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men couldn't extricate themselves from. As for why this poor little golden man was lying starving in front of Wang Ling, it was purely because the expired crispy noodle snacks he had exchanged with Wang Ling had been snatched away by his companions, and he had already been forced to develop the habit of eating expired crispy noodle snacks under Wang Ling's law of unequal exchange over the years. He would feel uncomfortable all over if he didn't eat them for a day. In the last few days, Wang Ling hadn't looked for him to exchange crispy noodle snacks, and the little golden man couldn't eat anything else, preferring to go hungry. Loopy Toad never thought that a Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man would actually be so addicted to crispy noodle snacks that he couldn't extricate himself from. This showed the magical power of Little Master Ling's crispy noodle snacks. It couldn't be helped. Apart from the 6 main Heavenly Tao, including Strength Heavenly Tao, the rest of the little golden men worked under them. Furthermore, they worked overtime on a 996 basis, and when they got off, they went to the ICU. The little golden men had different ways of replenishing themselves. Some little golden men sucked out the divine power of evildoers, which was why there were so many vegetative people around the world who never woke up. Many of these people looked like good people, but they had all made mistakes when they were young, which the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men had noticed. Some little golden men replenished themselves by devouring time, which was why people always felt that time flew by. There were times when you were just looking at your phone to pass the time. In the end, a few hours would be gone. The truth was that the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men played a role in this. People who didn't cherish life, didn't write well, didn't work hard or study hard would appear quietly and steal their time. Of course, there were also little golden men who liked to devour souls, the souls of evildoers. These people had committed murder in their lives, and naturally couldn't enter the cycle of reincarnation after death. Since they couldn't go through reincarnation, they could only become food for the Heavenly Tao. The principle of equivalent exchange was an unchanging law of Heavenly Tao, except for whitelist users. Since they had done evil when they were young, they would sooner or later suffer retribution from heaven. If you didn't want heaven to know, don't do it. There were many other examples, but the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men usually replenished their energy by devouring power, time, space, soul, spirit, and even life and death. They constantly absorbed these powers to strengthen themselves. Finally, in the year-end election every year, they would become the 6 leaders of Heavenly Tao, who symbolized the limits of Heavenly Tao's power, which was the current Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. Strength Heavenly Tao, Time Heavenly Tao, Space Heavenly Tao, Soul Heavenly Tao, Life and Death Heavenly Tao, Mind Heavenly Tao. The current 6 leaders of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee had risen through this method. Of course, the laws of the Heavenly Tao were ever-changing. Although the 6 leaders held high positions, it was not impossible for them to be expelled from the 6 great Heavenly Tao. In the past, there had been periods when other Heavenly Taos had ascended to the position of the 6 leaders, such as the Heavenly Tao of Nothingness, the Heavenly Tao of Reality, the Heavenly Tao of Greed, and so on. However, the mechanism of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee had always been survival of the fittest. Currently, the 6 members of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee were the most stable 6. They had been in high positions for many years and had not been replaced for 16 years. But the 6 great Heavenly Tao were panicking now, because one day 16 years ago, Wang Ling was born. They were very worried that in the future, a Heavenly Tao called Snack Heavenly Tao would occupy the position of their leader. A heavenly Tao who relied on eating crispy noodle snacks to ascend to the position. This was absolutely unprecedented in the history of the heavenly Tao. Although it seemed a little difficult to rely on this method to ascend to the position of the 6 leaders, there was one thing that made the heavenly Tao governing committee very uneasy. When Wang Ling was very young, he had used the Great Replication spell to throw crispy noodle snacks into space. Now, there was a crispy noodle galaxy in the sky. This galaxy had already been jointly sealed by the 6 great heavenly Tao. If Wang Ling discovered it one day and unsealed it again, the 6 of them might not be able to sit still. Although the possibility of snack heavenly Tao ascending to the position was very small, considering that their opponent was Wang Ling, the 6 great heavenly Tao didn't dare let their guard down. Thus, they agreed to all of Wang Ling's seemingly unreasonable exchange requests, satisfying this youngster. To be honest, when Wang Ling saw the hungry little golden man collapse in front of him, his heart had been moved. From the very beginning, this little golden man in front of him had been the person in charge of the equivalent exchange with Wang Ling from the heavenly Tao. Wang Ling hadn't expected that under his subtle influence, even this little golden man would fall in love with crispy noodle snacks. Not bad, this time, Wang Ling wasn't stingy. He generously took out a collector's edition crispy noodle snack from his inventory and carefully tore open the packaging. Then, he took out the special pepper noodles inside and finally poured them in. A familiar aroma quickly wafted out. The little golden man on the ground couldn't help twitching, and he actually came back to life on the spot, salivating and full of blood. Woof! The little golden man pounced on him with his butt in the air. What was even worse was that Wang Ling actually opened his mouth to speak, and his tone was extremely gentle. Don't rush, eat slowly. No one will fight you for it. As the little golden man ate the collector's edition crispy noodle snack, he bawled. He was as obedient as a puppy as he accepted Wang Ling's touch as he ate. Loopy toad. A few minutes later, the little golden man, who had finished eating the crispy noodle snack, finally calmed down. Realizing his gaffe, the little golden man got up from Wang Ling's arms with a flushed face. He sorted out his emotions and then took a deep breath. Well, what's the matter? Loopy Toad didn't know if it was seeing things, but it suddenly felt like the little golden man's face was a little red. Heavenly Tao little golden men were expressionless and had no facial features. Furthermore, their bodies gave off a faint golden light of heavenly Tao, and they looked like natural humanoid works of art made of 999 pure gold. But now, Loopy Toad actually saw a blush on the little golden man's face. Was there something wrong with this golden man's mind? Although little Master Ling was indeed very likable, you were a freaking heavenly Tao. I want to track down the whereabouts of a few people. Wang Ling gazed at the heavenly Tao with a gentle gaze that Loopy Toad couldn't understand. A person who loved crispy noodle snacks, could little Master Ling like him so much, even if it was a heavenly Tao little golden man? No way. It also wanted to eat it. It would eat it tomorrow. As Wang Ling's #1 battle pet, the moment it saw Wang Ling and the heavenly Tao exchange gazes, Loopy Toad actually felt like it had fallen out of favor. It absolutely wouldn't let that happen. Chapter 1068. After learning of Wang Ling's request, the little golden man immediately applied to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee to request Space Heavenly Tao and Time Heavenly Tao, 2 of the 6 main Heavenly Tao, to search the entire planet for the remaining 9 people who had eaten the frozen dumplings. Only the 2 main Heavenly Tao, Space Heavenly Tao and Time Heavenly Tao, could complete the search at a specific time and place. Wang Ling was the only one who could command the main Heavenly Tao. Otherwise, even Gu Xuanji, the keeper of order who maintained the peace of the universe, would have to go through the approval process. After waiting for a few minutes, the search was over. The little golden man opened his hand, and a golden scroll appeared in his hand. The 9 people's names, contact information, and home addresses were all clearly written on the golden scroll. Furthermore, it was written in very neat Heavenly Tao script, which normal people wouldn't be able to understand at all. But Wang Ling was naturally self-taught when it came to the Heavenly Tao script, and didn't need to learn it. It was as if this language had taken root in his head as his mother tongue, and had been constantly updating its vocabulary since birth. By the time Wang Ling was 10, he had mastered all the heavenly Tao script. Gazing at the 9 names, Wang Ling heaved a long sigh of relief. These 9 people were all in Songhai City, and the frozen dumplings which had been contaminated with the aura of the great Tao by Shadow Tao hadn't spread. Next, he would have to seal these 9 people one by one. Wang Ling looked at the first name, Li Daiwei. According to the information, this was an ordinary middle-aged man with a low realm at the foundation establishment stage. But his profession was a little scary. He was an undertaker who mainly put on makeup for the dead. And on the list, he was the only one who lived in the suburbs. And it just so happened that this person lived pretty close to the Wang family's small villa. Wang Ling decided to start with this person first. Of course, to prevent any unexpected situations, Wang Ling also sent the names of the other people to grenade-throwing senior Immortal and asked him to send a small team to keep an eye on them. Logically speaking, Wang Ling thought that as long as he sealed them, he would be safe. But what happened next was far beyond Wang Ling's expectations. The power that his unborn little sister wielded was far beyond what Wang Ling could imagine. About 800 li east of the Wang clan's small villa was a graveyard called the Pines and Cranes Garden. Those who could be buried in this cemetery were basically the children of rich and powerful families. Nowadays, the price of graves was very high, and it was even comparable to the price of a house. A square meter in a high-class graveyard could cost hundreds of thousands. So much so that people couldn't even afford to die. The profession of embalmer was a job that made many people pale at the mention of it. Many embalmers had experienced this when they went on blind dates. They were having a good time, but as soon as they started talking about work, the target would try to run away. Interacting with the dead was seen as a taboo in the eyes of many people. This was partly due to the customs and culture of his hometown, but in fact, it was more superstition. Any profession should be respected. Since there was a job as an embalmer, it meant that there was a need for it in society. Since it was a job that society needed, why would they be afraid of it? Wang Ling used the body teleportation spell to appear at the entrance of the park, followed by Dog 2. Dog 2 had nothing to do at home, so it asked to come out with Wang Ling for some fresh air. In front of the main entrance, Wang Ling got a good look at the entire park. The cemetery was covered in green and gave off a refreshing floral fragrance. All kinds of flower trees were planted neatly around it: tower cypress, dragon cypress, 7 lilies, chrysanthemum, dragon claw flowers. The planting of these flowers and trees was also very particular. They symbolized mourning and dignity. They could intimidate the souls of the deceased who had died in an accident. Standing at the entrance, Wang Ling could see in the distance that at the end of the stone steps leading up was a huge 6-legged incense burner. The bottom of the burner glowed faintly, and the smoke that drifted out of it was as white as snow, so holy that it seemed like it could refract light. This was the cemetery's incense burner. In order to promote the concept of environmental protection, people who had come to pay their respects to their loved ones could place the paper money they had prepared in the opening at the bottom of the incense burner. After that, the incense burner would break down the paper money into environmentally friendly smoke that could be quickly absorbed by the surrounding trees. This smoke was very visual. It was like a dragon connecting the sky, so the cyclone of smoke could be seen from a distance. It was like a track that could connect to heaven and other places, and was entrusted with people's longing for the deceased. Wang Ling cast the invisibility spell and walked over with Loopy Toad, who looked around curiously. Because of their powerful eyes, one man and one dog could see a lot of spirits floating in the graveyard on the side as they walked along the main path. These spirits had all been buried recently, and were waiting to ascend to heaven and return to Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao governing committee had to go through some procedures, so these spirits could only wait. Wang Ling had cast the great invisibility spell, and ordinary people couldn't see him, but these spirits could. The world after death was different from a normal person's perspective. Although these spirits couldn't see Wang Ling and Loopy Toad's faces clearly, they could sense their existence and see their general outlines. Mom, it looks like someone's coming. Judging from their shape, it should be a person and a dog. Don't go, it's dangerous. They don't look like tombstones, so they should be wandering ghosts. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, as it turned out, these spirits thought they were spirits as well. Mom, but they don't look like bad people. Can I go play with the dog? No, daughter, we're going to ascend to heaven soon. We can't let anything happen. Our cemetery hasn't been peaceful recently. A very strong malicious ghost has come, and I'm afraid these two wandering ghosts will attract its attention very soon. The woman said timidly. She took her daughter's hand and hid behind her tombstone. The tombstone had a barrier seal, and as long as they hid nearby, it would be a safe zone, and normal malicious ghosts wouldn't be able to get close at all. Wang Ling had wanted to ignore the mother and daughter and walk straight past them, but when he heard that the cemetery wasn't peaceful, his curiosity was suddenly piqued. Loopy Toad understood what its master meant, and directly led the way through the cemetery to the mother and daughter's tombstones. Mom. Did they see us? The little girl was a little nervous. Of course we saw them, and we heard everything you said. Loopy Toad looked at the little girl and said, Little girl, what happened in the cemetery recently? If you know, please tell me. Otherwise, when you ascend to heaven, I'll have the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee give you homework. Don't think that just because you've become a spirit, you don't have to write anymore. Hearing this, the little girl burst into tears. Wang Ling. Chapter 1069. What Loopy Toad said wasn't a threat, but the truth. It had already been said countless times that the Heavenly Tao emphasized the principle of equivalence. In the mortal world, those who didn't do their homework properly, didn't do it, or even copied it would automatically enter a remedial room after they ascended to heaven to complete their unfinished homework. They had to complete all the homework they had missed out on during their 9 years of compulsory education before they could enter the Heavenly Tao cycle of reincarnation. Although the little girl wasn't very old, she looked like she was already in the 4th grade of primary school. Nowadays, there was a lot of homework for primary school students, but Loopy Toad didn't know whether the girl had finished it or not. In any case, if she hadn't, there was a high chance that she would still have to make it up after she ascended to heaven. Even as a spirit, she had to be a cultured spirit. Only in this way could she enter the cycle of reincarnation and become a human again. If she was poor in the field of knowledge, there were other Tao of reincarnation waiting for her, the Beast Tao, the Hungry Ghost Tao and so on. Of course, the Heavenly Tao's principle of equivalence exchange was different. If some people completed their homework but indulged themselves too much in the mortal world, they would also have to complete an abstinence exchange in the Heavenly Tao. This was even crueler than making up for homework, because they just needed to live in a closed room for a few years. Furthermore, there was no Wi-Fi. No smartphone. They could only reflect on their mistakes in front of the wall. Seeing that it had scared the little girl into crying, Loopy Toad felt a little embarrassed. Little girl, Big Brother lied to you. You lied again. You're clearly a dog. She crouched down to comfort her daughter. After her crying gradually subsided, she got up and bowed to Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Exalted immortals, may I know what you want to ask? What's the deal with the malicious ghost you mentioned earlier? Loopy Toad asked bluntly. It's like this, about 4 days ago, a black spirit suddenly appeared in the cemetery. It wandered around the area and caught a lot of spirits who had escaped from the tombstones. What happened to those spirits? They were all swallowed by this black spirit. Hearing this, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad were silent. A black spirit seemed to fit the criteria for Shadow Tao very well. Perhaps it was that Undertaker's escaped shadow? After being bestowed with the power of the Shadow Tao, the human's shadow seemed to possess a soul, and it was bestowed with a will similar to the owner's. It would help the owner complete some subconscious tasks. Embalmers put makeup on the dead, and they might have some inappropriate evil thoughts towards the spirits of the dead. In the cultivation world, graveyard workers had to go through strict screening before they could be employed. This was because there were some evil Tao magical arts that used the absorption of spiritual bodies to strengthen one's cultivation. And gravediggers had such favorable conditions to cast such evil spells. There was such a case 100 years ago. There was a person who used a curse spell to send Ozzel in the bullet screen of all the major videos. And those who watched the bullet screen would often tease Way's mass grave. In fact, there were many Way with the word Way in their names who died after seeing the cursed grenade. Their spirit bodies were absorbed by the person who cast the curse. When the police finally found the culprit, they discovered that the culprit was a staff member of the cemetery. After working in such an environment for a long time, there were bound to be times when one's mind would become restless and go berserk. Once one's mind was unguarded, evil thoughts would seize the opportunity to enter. Coupled with the halo of professional discrimination that came with being a graveyard worker, this kind of demonic thought grew stronger and stronger. "Thank you." Wang Ling thanked the mother and daughter, then snapped his fingers at the sky. In a flash, the golden light of Heavenly Tao's guidance fell on the heads of the mother and daughter. "Daughter. Heavenly Tao has come to guide us. Mom, can we be reincarnated?" Startled by the golden light, the mother and daughter instantly hugged each other and cried tears of joy. These days, they had been scared after seeing the black spirit bodies, and didn't know when the Heavenly Tao would take them away. They never thought that this little brother whose face they couldn't see clearly would actually help them. With just a snap of his fingers, he could actually alarm the Heavenly Tao to help them. Was this little brother the Heavenly Tao itself that had descended into the mortal world? Overwhelmed by the favor, the woman hurriedly knelt down in front of Wang Ling with her daughter. A little embarrassed, Wang Ling helped them up, and finally watched as the mother and daughter were sent into reincarnation under the guidance of the Heavenly Tao golden light. Wang Ling pinched his fingers together and did some calculations. After reincarnating, the mother and daughter would become sisters who would live in a wealthy family and not have to worry about food and clothing. Of course, the reason why Wang Ling had the Heavenly Tao take them away in advance wasn't for any other reason. It was because of their kind intentions and pitiful life experiences. They had drowned to save a boy who had fallen into the water. After their deaths, their actions hadn't been approved by the boy's family. Perhaps it was because they were worried that the mother and daughter's families would demand compensation, or maybe it was because of other reasons, but after their deaths, their spirits had never been able to rest in peace. Just now, they had been soaked from head to toe. Thus, Wang Ling decided to help them. Now, his top priority was to ferret out the black spirit bodies. "May I know why the two of you have graced us with your presence?" At that moment, a cold voice rang out behind Wang Ling. Turning his head, Wang Ling saw a stooped old man with snow-white makeup whose hair had already fallen off smiling at him. The other party's smile was very terrifying and eerie. The most important thing was that this person had no shadow. "It's this person." Loopy Toad narrowed its eyes. It could clearly sense the evil intent emanating from this old man. Coupled with the fact that he didn't have a shadow, this person was probably the Undertaker they were looking for. What a pity, what a pity. The Undertaker looked regretfully at the mother and daughter who had flown into the sky along with the Heavenly Tao golden light. "These mother and daughter were going to be my dinner today. I never thought that the Heavenly Tao would actually extradite them. Disrespected spirits are the most delicious. If I had enlightened them, they might have had a chance to become evil spirits. It wouldn't be bad to be my subordinate." Wang Ling frowned. This person had already completely fallen onto the evil path. Sure enough, as Wang Ling had expected, Anwan's shadow power could activate the evil in a person's subconscious. This evil was usually hidden and wouldn't flare up at all. But once it was activated, the accumulated evil power would be like blood clots that had been blocked for a long time, erupting in an instant like a geyser. So the truth was that this Undertaker was also a victim. Anwan was still the one to blame for this. Wang Ling was thinking of a countermeasure. This Undertaker's evil intent had already penetrated deep into his bones, and even his shadow had escaped. This was completely different from Father Zheng and Wu Yuanji's situation. Using the Great Seal spell to seal away his power was no longer enough. Should he use the Great Purification spell? Wang Ling quickly flicked his finger on the Undertaker's forehead. But something he hadn't expected happened. Not only wasn't the evil intent in this Undertaker's body purified at all, his aura had instead increased a lot. How could this be? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.